of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, February 6th, 2025. My name is Emma Vigeland, and for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Allison Pugh, author of The Last Human Job, The Work of Disconnecting in a Disconnected World. And later in the show, Zachary Foster will be back with us to talk about Trump's endorsement of ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Also on the program today, resistance against Elon's treasury coup notches a win. The DOJ agrees to temporarily restrict him and his cronies from accessing all our data after 3 federal employees' unions sued. Speaking of those unions, by the way, membership for the largest federal employee union skyrocketed in January in response to this. We're still in a horrifying situation, though, because Musk did get access, according to reporting, to the health payment systems, which include Medicare and Medicaid. Musk announces his intentions to make cuts to our federal aviation system. Yes, after those multiple crashes. Multiple! Wasn't there an issue in Seattle the other day, too?
Was that the Japan Airlines?
Yes.
Yeah, Delta, yeah.
I guess more austerity, not more funding, is what's needed to keep us safe. Experts say the U.S. aid freeze cuts off HIV healthcare for 20 million people, including 500,000 children internationally. Senate and House Republicans are already fighting over the budget package. At issue, should the tax cuts for the rich be short-term or permanent? Some Democrats are finally stepping up. Senator Brian Schatz led a filibuster over Vote's OMB nomination, and Representatives Judy Chu and Gwen Moore reportedly barged into Mike Johnson's office yesterday and demanded to be seen despite not having an appointment over Musk's treasury tinkering. Trump reverses course, says no U.S. troops will be deployed to occupy Gaza, but Palestinians will be temporarily relocated. Temporarily, sure. Netanyahu's thrilled about this, tells the United States press how much he loves the plan. Trump signs an executive order banning trans girls and women from competing in sports. A reminder, there are fewer than 10 trans college athletes in the country. A federal judge in Maryland puts Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship on hold. Earth just experienced its warmest January on record. And lastly, in the Congo, 150 female prisoners were raped and burned to death during a mass jailbreak as rebels rapidly advance in the east. A horrifying situation there. All this and more on today's Majority Report, or should I say, an EmMajority Report. Hello, Matt. Hello, Bradley. My friends, my colleagues, my nemesis. No, I don't know. I couldn't find the third thing. Deep Thoughts writes in, hospitals rely on 65% of their revenue from Medicare and Medicaid patients because they reliably pay for approved procedures. Yes. This disruption by Musk is even
coup.
Yeah. This coup of our treasury system and the HHS which has like a nearly $2 trillion budget, and millions upon millions of Americans rely on these services for their basic health care. I mean, the numbers in terms of Medicare and Medicaid, the people that are on those government programs, 61 million people are on Medicare, 72 million are on Medicaid, and 7 million are on CHIP, which is the Children's Health Insurance Program, which is the Medicaid equivalent. So, that's like over a third of our population that is going to be negatively affected by Musk going in and messing with these systems that are already insufficient to keep people fed with healthcare, etc. And we're going to be talking to Zachary in just a second about the developments as it relates to Trump and Gaza. But this was also horrifying. Yesterday, Donald Trump signed an executive order titled Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports. And notably, it looks like he's trying to recreate the Tim Walz photo op of signing free school lunches into law, where all these kids started to hug him. But in this instance, he's using all young girls to surround him. I mean, this is some image. They're all white too, which seems like... I
mean, it's his supporters, probably daughters, I imagine.
Yeah, it seems like a deliberate choice, but here he is signing that law into ban, which, as a reminder, the recount points out, would affect less than 1% of student athletes. And to say less than 1% is almost exaggerating the number of people that are going to be targeted by this.
They could just say the number.
Yeah.
Secret Service is worried about them. If we have to worry about them, we have big problems. Okay, do you want to do this? Watch what I do, and then I'm going to give you some pens, okay? Are you ready? What a nice picture this is, huh, Governor? You ready? We'll do a good job. Wait, let me press that. I want to make this a really good signature, because this is a big one, right?
Okay.
Is it a big one?
Whatever.
Yeah, keep going. I wanted to see what he says at the end.
Oh, I think we have a 10. We have a 10.
God bless you, Mr. President.
The daughters of the Confederacy.
Yeah. All right. That was it. He's fixated on the size of his signature, as always. Just truly the brain of a
really important stuff
an
we're
idiot.
doing.
And yeah, I mean, obviously, this is just atrocious. The population of trans athletes. This came out in the hearings. I think it was Dick Durbin that asked this question, but there are over 500,000 NCAA athletes. Fewer than 10 are transgender. Fewer than 10.
And again, we don't need America's governing bodies and political bodies to be encroaching and making, frankly, propaganda out of an issue that should be handled by athletic directors and people like that. It's just ludicrous that this is politics.
And notice how he's just surrounded by young girls, just surrounded by young cis girls. Because we've talked about this before. The trans anxiety that they try to engender and ramp up is based still and connected to notions of patriarchy. So there's an anxiety among white male conservatives about the idea of having their genitalia removed surgically that they tap into. And also this notion that how could you want to become a woman, the lesser sex? Because you notice that trans men are not really the subject of this hate campaign, and that's not to belittle what trans men go through, but this particular focus on trans girls and women in sports, it's a way to, in the same way that white women and their safety was used to justify racial discrimination in the past, and was the reason that lynchings, justification for lynchings in the South and things like that, the protection of young white girls and women is being used for hateful ends in this area as well.
No coalition in recent American history has done more to attack the rights of young women than this one.
Yeah.
With the stocking of the Supreme Court with Roe versus Wade. Who gets abortions disproportionately? It's younger women. And they are now telling you to like spy on your neighbors and rat them out. So they need to be seen doing something because they do have still women in their coalition and they can be satisfied, unfortunately, with this sort of complete bullshit symbolism, and which is at the price of attacking like a handful of trans people who want to be included in sports.
Yeah, and it's thankfully 15 attorneys general from blue states are issued a statement and said that they're going to protect gender-affirming care. But Trump is doing this under Title IX through the Department of Education, and essentially saying that allowing trans girls in sports or trans women, the fewer than 10 out of 500,000 in the NCAA, is discriminating against those women. It's so paper thin when you get just like to the logic of it, because this is less than 0.002% that we're talking about here. But hey, a marginalized population that we can punch at and attack because we want to distract from the fact that we're looting the federal government and cutting taxes for the rich. Sure, we'll do that.
And we're actually coming for your freedoms because actually we're putting Republican lawmakers and politicians between not only like people in sports who don't need it, but also people and women and their doctors.
Yeah.
And like, it's just so, it should be obvious to people what's actually happening right now. And people who think this is at all relevant for politics, that we have some sort of scourge of people misgendering themselves to play in sports, you are a lunatic.
Yeah.
You have been subscribed to hysteria and you are being basically led around like an idiot because your votes are helpful for fascists trying to take power.
And so this was Fox News's reaction to this. Here's Jesse Waters talking to Jessica Tarlov, who's the resident liberal on the Five, about this executive order.
Jesse, what do you think?
How many trans teens killed themselves today, Jessica?
Jesus.
I didn't get my update yet. I don't know.
Well, no, because you guys said that if you wouldn't let trans teens do whatever they wanted, they were going to become suicidal. So I'm just wondering, you know, between this and the no surgeries, we should see a rash of teenage suicide this year, right? Obviously, I'm being sarcastic because that was a BS excuse. Where are the records going to go? That's what I'm worried about, because a lot of men shattered female records. Those records should be replaced.
Never happened.
Where are the Democrats protesting this? I thought trans rights were human rights, Jessica. No, they're protesting a slush fund.
Okay, all right, whatever. I mean, just the mocking of the suicide stuff is all I need to see, because I made this point on social media, and I don't, like, there's some sort of turf group that has me on alerts or something like that, and they're all coming at it with the same talking points. Oh, the suicide thing, you're holding us hostage, as if they're the victims in this instance. I mean, it's absolutely astounding. Yeah. But Jesse Waters, now he suddenly cares about the topic of suicidal ideation as it relates to discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation. He's just throwing that out there to make fun of the left, because he never illustrated the fact that there was a study, and have been multiple studies, by UCLA that found that 81% of transgender adults in this country have considered suicide. 42% of transgender adults have attempted it. 56% have engaged in self-injury over their lifetimes. And that is not the same proportion as cisgender people. Trans adults are 7 times more likely to contemplate suicide, 4 times more likely to attempt it, 8 times as likely to engage in non-suicidal self-injury, according to this study from UCLA. And there's a ton of other information on this front that you can look up. Is that just because they're so mentally ill? That's what the Republicans try to say, as they say, like, don't come for us on gun control. It's the mental illness problem. But on this this point, they don't want to help anybody. All they want to do is shove you back in the closet. That's what it is. And if suicidal ideation increases because people can't live their lives and be themselves, so be it. That's the society that they're trying to create. So just gratuitous, ridiculous. And I know personally, I have a trans man in my family who was trying to reapply for their passport, and it's not coming back. And there's concern, and they're hearing all over the place that these passports, when people tried to apply, they were being held up. And yeah, it's just going to result in more discrimination, and these 4 years are going to be extremely difficult.
Yeah, and anybody who fed into it should be ashamed of themselves.
Absolutely. All right, folks, a word from one of our sponsors before we get to our guest, Allison. Ever wonder how much of your personal data is out there on the internet for anyone to see? More than you think. Your name, your contact information, social security number, and home address, even information about your family members. It's all being compiled by data brokers and sold online. Data brokers make profit off your data. Your data is a commodity. Anyone on the web can buy your private details, and that can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, harassment, unwanted spam calls. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. I've been using Delete Me since before I even joined the Majority Report, when, my spouting off on the internet. Got to protect myself and my loved ones, and I was worried that there would be data out there about people's addresses, their names, etc. Delete Me gave me peace of mind and has been very effective in those years. Sign up and provide Delete Me with exactly what information you want deleted, and their experts take it from there. Delete Me sends you regular personalized privacy reports showing what information that they found, where they found it, and what they removed. Delete Me is not just a one-time service. Delete Me is always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information that you don't want on the internet. To put it simply, Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping your and your family's personal information from data broker websites. Take control of your data and your private and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners, today get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting majority to 64,000. Text majority to 64,000. That's majority to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Again, that's majority to 64000. All right, folks, quick break, and we'll be talking to Allison. We are back, and we are joined now by Allison Pugh, professor of sociology at Johns Hopkins University and author of The Last Human Job, The Work of Connecting in a Disconnected World. Allison, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So AI, very much in the news right now, and I think relevant because the Silicon Valley billionaires have kind of taken control of our government. I guess just as somebody that's written about this, especially from a sociological perspective, what do you observe the AI, the kind of creeping AI takeover? What does that look like to you, I guess, over the past few months?
Yeah, I guess, over the past few months, it's been a wild ride. And we've seen AI move from, it's gonna, revolutionize biology. It's helping us invent new antibiotics. It's helping us predict earthquakes, to moving much more aggressively into education spaces, into therapy, into places where you expect really to meet another human being. And that's really unsettling and really disturbing for me, especially after 5 years of research into this.
Yeah, and the therapy piece, you talk about that in your book, and that is just one of the, I think, most acute examples of this dynamic of the destruction of human connection. And that angle is what you choose to focus on versus, on our show, we're a political show, so we've talked about the labor ramifications of AI and the privacy concerns. But this lack of human connection, why did you think that was important to explore?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I am glad that people are out there talking about bias and talking about surveillance and talking about job loss. Those are the three ways people really have tackled kind of a critical view of AI and what's happening in our world today. But I saw what was missing is we are not really talking about AI's impact on relationship, on human to human connection. And I felt like when we're not talking about that, we're not we don't have our eyes open to a major risk that AI poses, which I end up calling the depersonalization crisis, which is that people don't feel seen. And, when vast swaths of society don't feel seen, then you have, populism, and you have people voting out of anger, and you have, I think it was David Brooks who wrote an op-ed like the day after the election saying, voters to elites, do you see us now? Something like that. So being unseen is a really important social kind of phenomenon, and it starts with the kind of degradation of human to human connection, that kind of connective labor that is precious and that we have to protect.
The term connective labor, that's a big, central part of your argument. Can you flesh out what that means?
Sure. Yeah. So connective labor is, really when humans see the other person as a kind of underlying engine for outcomes that we value. So that's my version of trying to get at the fact that connective labor is what's happening underneath a lot of different occupations, not just therapy. Therapy is the most obvious one. You have to feel seen by your therapist for whatever they're saying to land. But also teachers and primary care physicians, and then not just people with college degrees, but like hairdressers, and then not just people who are doing work for your well-being, but also maybe high-end sales, people working in security, like detectives or hostage negotiators. I just was really interested. I started out this book really interested in just collecting as many occupations as I could find across the economy that relied on seeing the other in some way for the outcomes that we value.
The therapy is a great example, but the healthcare piece is so relevant. I mean, United Healthcare, obviously in the news because of the killing of the CEO, was using AI to deny claims. And if you could just speak about that level of alienation, I think, and how, frankly, it exacerbates this already existing anxiety that we have in this country, that when people deal with our for-profit healthcare system, medical bankruptcy is the top cause of bankruptcy in this country. And then now, when you got to deal with the middleman that's between you and your doctor, you may not be dealing with a middleman at all. You may be dealing with an artificial intelligence system. Yeah, and that's just chilling. It's kind of the utmost example, the epitome of a kind of dehumanization trend. I understand the rationale behind it. The U.S. government and organizations have long deployed AI in positions that humans don't like to do.
jobs that humans don't like to do. So for a long time, you've had like robots even doing bomb sniffing for the army. Like we've deployed machines to help humans not have to do the bad work, the dirty work. And I guess in healthcare, that's denying people's claims. The trouble is that it taps into kind of one of the futures that I foresee for the future of work, which is the kind of distinction between thinking and feeling, and the idea that like machines are for thinking. So we'll let we'll give them the thinking jobs and humans will be doing the feeling jobs. But the trouble is that so much feeling work actually involves thinking also. And that's most captured in the idea of mercy. And if you're just about like the rational calculus, you're going to kind of miss out on occasions of mercy. And I think that, an AI who's charged with denying medical claims is a perfect example.
Yeah, and it is further disconnecting us from our humanity. And that's part of it. I mean, I guess for me, that's what I feel, at least with there are, as you say, functional uses for it. And I think that in the future, it might help with data scraping or all these things to make labor easier for people. But the concern is you write that Moneyball has come for collective labor. I like that line because it's almost like a consulting what a consulting would do, and going into different sectors of like, how can we cut labor? And usually labor is the first thing they cut. How can we cut? How can we make things more efficient? And efficiency usually just means how can we do our basic function as a service provider and cut down on overheads so people at the top can get more wealthy. And AI is like kind of a great tool for that purpose.
Yeah, I mean, the Moneyball point was actually kind of a central argument that I was making in the book, because it's not like AI just comes and goes plop and erases your favorite therapist. It's actually it follows a kind of trajectory of making those jobs worse. And the way we've made those jobs worse is essentially by trying to impose an industrial model on them. So to make them more efficient, just as you say, and to impose requirements for data collection on the very people who are supposed to be connecting to you. So a perfect example of that is like your favorite primary care physician who has to, kind of take notes in the electronic health record while they're also trying to listen to you. And I had many doctors talk to me about how they had to learn this new skill of typing, but at the same time, typing right into the computer, but not having to look while they're typing so that they can have eye contact with their patients. And we know that there's 50% burnout rate for primary care physicians, and that data entry and data requirements are a big part of that. So the kind of degradation of these jobs is what makes it more likely to be replaced or affected by AI moving in.
Go
ahead.
No. I want you to finish. Go ahead.
Well, the trouble is that these jobs, yes, they are, kind of messy, chaotic, kind of connections between human beings that aren't entirely predictable. So they're really challenging for the bottom line. And then also they require, to be effective, you can't really scale it up. You can't have like thousands of people meet the same primary care physician. And, there's a limit. There's a kind of physical limit to how much an individual person can see the other. So the it's not going to be a place where you're going to get huge productivity gains. And economists have kind of observed that for decades. The thing is, I don't mind.
Right.
It feels like we have productivity gains in the other domains, like in, in making clothes or making food. The point of those productivity gains is so that we can have these deeply meaningful experiences with other human beings. And that is the kind of profound meaning of that work and how it creates community, creates dignity, creates connection with other people. That's what life is for. We're talking about teaching a child to read, helping someone, heal from their depression or from their diabetes, or, these are the stuff of life, and replacing them so that they can be more efficient feels like prioritizing the wrong thing.
Well, capitalism would say otherwise. So, I mean, that I guess is the central question, right? Like, is that just, is this kind of an outgrowth of capitalism and it being in this very late stage, I would say, and wealth concentrated in such a manner that these systems of alienation, it's financializing everything and deprioritizing connection.
Yes. I'm a little hopeful, or the reason why I wrote this book was to try and kind of spark some awareness in people so that they can, it's not over yet. It's not a done deal. People can still say, AI is good over here in these tasks, predicting earthquakes, et cetera. But, my favorite one was like, how they tell us how to decode sperm whale language. Great. Let's have more of that. But let's apply a connection criterion so that if AI is getting in the way of humans connecting to each other, let's say no to that. There's plenty of other things for AI to do, and that AI does well.
And the part about that, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, that I just find fascinating is how tech sells AI is really interesting to me, because you write about how people are almost intoxicated by the way tech presents some of this stuff. Like, it's future focused, and it sounds like there is a way to solve your problems very easily with technology. Can you explain like what you found about how people relate to tech and even AI that may benefit, I think, people trying to oversell this technology and put it around us everywhere?
Yes. Yeah. I've been mentioning this in talks around the country, like when I go to bookstores and stuff, because I'm hoping to kind of arm people against the hype so that they can like recognize it and go like, oh, that's that hype, that's that hype argument, and basically there's three ways that AI is sold to us. The first is that it's better than nothing. Who's gonna, when you have an underserved population who doesn't have access to kind of good, warm, authentic, and competent human beings, say human teachers or human doctors, then let's just give them, an AI chatbot or something that will, kind of be better than nothing. And the question I have for that is, don't give other people what you wouldn't accept for yourself. That's really kind of solidifying and capitulating to an inequality that's needs to be addressed by other means. The second is AI is better than humans, and that is true in cases of AI doesn't ask for a union, AI doesn't need to sleep, AI, so it can kind of handle 24/7 requirements or in voluminous data, et cetera. That one's a little tricky because people point out that human beings judge, and sometimes they judge wrongly, they misrecognize the other, there's sources of shame, and those are all true, especially for marginalized populations. So I don't think this is a small thing, but I also think that if we give that over to AI, then you will never be free of the shame that you feel in front of another human being. Like, we need other human beings to walk through those moments of judgment rather than, and also we know that bias and stereotyping often comes from intense time constraints. So the working conditions of these jobs create some of the bad connective labor that they've seen. And then the last one is humans, AI is better, AI and humans are better together. So that's a very common one. That's like AI will free us up for more meaningful work. And to which my question is, where is the more meaningful work than seeing the other and having the other feel seen? And so why are we automating that? And also, it's a really optimistic view of capitalism that employers are going to, kind of keep on workers who have been, whose works have been hollowed out by AI to kind of suffuse their jobs with more meaningful tasks. No, that's not going to happen. Actually, that's not the way capitalism works here.
And you hit on it too. Like the overpromising by these folks is just so self-serving, and it bugs the hell out of me. It was, I mean, back when Musk was promising Neuralink and self-driving cars in 2 years, I was saying this stuff. Or lab-grown meat is another example of like, why is our press reporting on stuff that is clearly there to advertise for investment money? Yes. And that's what I feel about the promises of AI. It's the practical reality is exactly what you say. But what we're being told about how like maybe it's actually, can we coexist with them? Like, this sci-fi, this invocation of like sci-fi lore, it's just silly. Yeah. But there is, for some, I would say, like with the bleakness of where we're at right now, it resembles an optimism.
That's well said.
But it's not.
The thing that I've noticed actually more in the last 6 months maybe is a kind of the message of panic, like, if you don't get on board, you're going to be left behind. And that's actually pretty common out there that I've seen. Like just recently, maybe yesterday, the day before, there was an announcement by the Cal State University program is now going to kind of bring in, chatbots for its, 450,000 students. And it's doing the language of the press release and the press coverage was like, if we don't do this hugely diverse student body will be left behind. And I'm like, having ChatGPT in an education setting is very dangerous. Think of it like Cliff Notes. Like, would you distribute Cliff Notes to your entire student body? No, because you don't want a Cliff Notes degree. There is no shortcut to critical thinking. And that's what they're kind of, kind of a widespread delivery of chatbot in an education setting is going to get you.
And lastly, on that point, how do you feel, especially you're at Johns Hopkins, you're an educator, how do you feel this kind of technological capture really of information, both our communications platforms right now, with Meta and Twitter, and then as it relates to like AI and ChatGPT, and do you notice the effects on critical thinking and this deep prioritization of the hard work of academia, or like the fact that it's not just about consuming as much data as possible, it's about reading something and then thinking about it and marinating in it, and the beauty of that, I sound like an old like person, get off my lawn, but I do feel like that degradation, I think it's a huge reason we're in this environment right now. It's so corroded.
Yeah, I mean, really what I'm seeing, it feels really related to the kind of drumbeat of kind of the denigration of higher education, which starts with the idea that higher ed is just about getting you a kind of consumer approach to higher ed. Like you just get this degree and then you can go out. But actually the point of higher ed is to kind of transform your thinking, to enable you to have critical thinking, kind of a systematic approach to data, a rigorous analysis, the capacity for rigorous analysis, a deep kind of humanistic approach to that involves empathy and understanding others. Like there's a whole host of kind of documented outcomes to getting higher ed, but getting further education, but it doesn't just happen because you're there. Like it's not just, kind of seeping in through the walls. You actually have to engage in the act of reading and writing and thinking with other people. And those are things that, have been under siege for quite some time, under attack. And because of that, we're seeing the kind of AI-ification of education. It's become a kind of weak target.
Well, the book is great. Really appreciate your time today, Allison Pugh. It's called The Last Human Job, The Work of Connecting in a Disconnected World. We will put a link to that below wherever people are listening to or watching this. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, folks, quick break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by Zachary Foster to talk about Trump's plans for Gaza. We are back, and we are joined once again by Zachary Foster, historian of Palestine, received his PhD in Near Eastern Studies from Princeton University. His newsletter, Palestine Nexus, is an essential follow. You archive so much Palestinian history, which is as important as ever right now, as, Israel has destroyed basically every educational institution in Gaza. Zach, welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me back.
For sure. So I guess we'll start here from the beginning of the week, where Benjamin Netanyahu visited the United States, met with Trump, and during their media appearances, Trump endorsed the ethnic cleansing of the Gaza Strip. Can you just give us a quick rundown of the developments from the past few days?
Well, we've all seen the press conference in which Donald Trump incited ethnic cleansing. He called for the complete removal of all Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip. Before the war, that was 2.3 million people. He threw out a figure of 1.5 million, 1.7 million, 1.8 million. It's unclear if he meant that, if he was implying the remaining Palestinians had already been killed, or if they had already left. It's unclear. We have no idea how many people are in Gaza now. But
can I just say, to add to that really quickly, people are saying, oh, you believe him now or whatever. It's not about believing him. It's that he's dumb enough to accidentally let slip what could actually be the internal numbers that they are estimating about the death toll, which, given that deficit, it would indicate 500,000. And we know that it's up well over, I would say, 100,000 at this point. It's somewhere between those two figures. That's my theory on that front.
Was it already last summer? We had a group of American physicians, some 99 American healthcare workers, report out about 118,000, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
We had the Lancet estimate of 180,000. The answer is we just have no idea how many people are killed because we don't have heavy equipment in Gaza. You can't actually dig people out of the rubble. And even if you could, so many bodies have been completely vaporized, have completely incinerated into ash. And so it's just totally unclear how many people have been killed. Could it be upwards of 400,000 people? Yes, it could be. That is exactly what experts have been telling us for already over a year now. So it's incredibly dire, the situation in Gaza. We had reports coming out. The Euro Human Rights Watch reported just this week that that humanitarian aid is not getting into Gaza. We know that trucks are entering Gaza, but they're not actually entering the north. And much of what is entering Gaza is actually not essential equipment. The hospitals have not been replenished. There's no MRI machines going in. There's 80+% of the wells in Gaza have been destroyed. None of the equipment to repair any of the wells has entered Gaza. So the humanitarian effort is slow, and it's not meeting the needs of the population. And so, right now we have a situation in which the sitting U.S. president is declaring his intent to carry out war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, on public TV. It's totally unreal. It's almost unprecedented. At least the Biden administration attempted to hide its attempts to ethnically cleanse Gaza. You recall that in the early month or two after October 7th, Blinken made his trip to Tel Aviv, and he discussed for hours and hours begging the Netanyahu administration to allow humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. But the Biden administration was totally on board with ethnic cleansing. Blinken made a trip around the Middle East, trying to convince Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, president of Egypt, to accept refugees. He tried to convince Jordan to accept Palestinian refugees. They all said no way, and they've all said no way again. Not just Egypt. Not just Jordan, which declared recently this past week that they would declare war against Israel if this plan to ethnically cleanse Palestinians was executed on. And then you saw the comments made by Saudi Arabia just in the past day or two, in which the Saudi Arabian foreign minister, wearing a keffiyeh, said, absolutely not. There's no way we're going to allow this to happen. There's no way we're going to agree to normalize with Israel unless there's a Palestinian state, something Trump lied about. He just openly stated what was a bold-faced lie, that Saudi Arabia had, in fact, agreed to some kind of normalization deal with Israel without the establishment of a Palestinian state. So Trump is totally deranged. He's unpredictable. It's unclear exactly where these comments came from. It seemed almost that Netanyahu was almost surprised by this proposition.
Pleasantly surprised.
Pleasantly surprised. Just that smirk on his face during the press conference, where he's smiling, where he's smirking, while Trump is openly declaring that Gaza will become, I don't know, some U.S. territory, annexed into the United States. I mean, it's just totally deranged.
Yeah. Seeing him smirk like that, the thoughts that were going through my brain, I'm not going to articulate it, but some vivid imagery I had. So the Jordan and Saudi Arabia, can you talk about the sincerity of their opposition? My concern is that in particular Saudi Arabia, because they don't have, they're worried about, yes, riots in the streets, but there's still no democracy there and direct way to hold MBS and that government accountable. Are you concerned that their public opposition is more window dressing than what the conversations look like behind the scenes?
There's no doubt that is correct. On the eve of October 7th, there were very, very serious, very, very high-level discussions between senior Saudi officials and U.S. officials and Israeli officials with regard to a normalization plan. There were even rumors that this had already effectively been agreed on, and there were just some details to iron out. That was October 6th, 2023. So there's no doubt, and that was coming on the heels of a 17-year-long blockade of the Gaza Strip, in which Israel suffocated the civilian population, imposing collective punishment on 2.2 million people after 4 wars in which Israel killed 4,000 plus innocent Palestinian civilians, 1,000 plus in 2008-9, 1,500 plus in 2014, many hundred in 2012, many hundred in 2021, many hundred in 2018-19. So the Saudi government has no regard for Palestinian human life, Palestinian civilian loss of life in the occupied Palestinian territories. Recall as well that it was Mohammed bin Salman who openly, I think, confessed it was a leaked report, but he basically said, I don't really care much about the Palestinians. I mean, this has been known for a long time now. Mohammed bin Salman carried out a 5, 6, 7-year-long war on Yemen, killing tens of thousands of Yemenis children. MBS has no regard whatsoever for innocent a loss of life at all. He butchered Jamal Khashoggi in the infamous murder of a Washington Post journalist in the Saudi embassy in Istanbul a couple of years ago. This is a person who has no regard for innocent life, for journalists, for humanitarian workers, for Palestinian civilians in Gaza. He is obsessed with kind of a 2030 vision in which Saudi Arabia is going to remake the Middle East. His plan is to build a city called Neom on the Red Sea coast, in which American entrepreneurs, businessmen around the world will create this kind of enclave, this almost a kind of like a little city in the desert, a westernized city where men and women will intermingle. But ultimately, that's his vision for the Middle East. It's a kind of almost a techno utopia. But it has nothing to do with human rights. It has nothing to do with women's rights. It has nothing to do with Palestinian rights. It's fundamentally about building a kind of a techno utopia to transition off the Saudi economy from oil to something else. But that's his vision. It has nothing to do with Palestinians.
That fits in extremely well with the tech billionaires, like anarcho-capitalist vision, whether it's Praxis and these other privatized cities that Andreessen and Musk and Peter Thiel are investing in. That's like Abu Dhabi. I mean, it's different, but like that's also the vision, right? More of that, more to increase tourism and not be so reliant on oil. And then if it's a tech utopia, that means surveillance and weapons technology. Then, right? Like that's the vision, is a hub of tech billionaires or tech billions, but then the surveillance and weapons technology that comes from it.
It's well known that Israel's military tech, its spy tech, is some of the most cutting edge military tech and spy tech in the world. I mean, we all know what Pegasus is capable of. They can tap any phone in the world without having the owner of that phone touch anything, tap anything, click anything. It is total surveillance. And the Saudis are already using that tech. We know that. Khashoggi's, I believe, his fiancée had her phone tapped and was being monitored by Pegasus, an Israeli spy tech firm. So we know what the goals of this Saudi administration are. They are to clamp down on any dissent whatsoever within the kingdom. They are to clamp down even on dissent from outside of the kingdom, as we saw with the Khashoggi assassination. They are to strengthen the alliance with Israel. To create a new Middle East, one in which Israel is supreme, one in which the Palestinians are completely irrelevant. But as we saw, because Trump's comments are so blatant, so overt, so with total disregard for the norms of saying things, of doing the quiet part quietly, he's blowing things up. He's actually really messing things up for Saudi Arabia. Because Saudi Arabia, like we said, isn't fundamentally interested in a Palestinian state. They don't really care about that. And Trump's just overt disregard for international humanitarian law, his open promotion of ethnic cleansing, is throwing a wrench in the Saudi plan for the future of the Middle East.
Because he's being too clear about it, right? And to be clear, the Biden administration, with some of the same folks that stayed on, like Brett McGurk, was pursuing the Abraham Accords and normalization with Saudi Arabia, which include potentially defense promises. Let's be like, you think we're entangled in Israel? Wait till the U.S. taxpayers have to say we're going to defend Saudi Arabia to our second greatest ally in the Middle East or whatever. But, they still weren't able to get that over the hump with Biden. That is what you're saying, right? Like, because the genocide of the Palestinians was active, so live streamed, so egregious, such an obvious international crime met with mass condemnation for most of the rest of the world. Is that almost more helpful in our current moment right now, to have this on the table and being like, okay, he threw down the gauntlet. Ethnic cleansing is the goal of this administration, and then maybe that boxes in MBS and Jordan and all of them.
It's fair to say that there's something particularly nefarious about saying one thing in public and doing the opposite in private. And that's exactly what the Biden administration was doing for 15 and a half months. They said in public, oh, we're pushing for a ceasefire. You recall AOC on the DNC stage Kamala Harris is doing everything in her power for a
Working
ceasefire.
tirelessly, yeah.
Working tirelessly, when in fact it was all nonsense. And there's something particularly nefarious and dangerous about that, because we let down our guard. And those of us who actually do want a ceasefire and who are gullible or naive are going to believe that. And we let down our guard and do nothing. Whereas we are seeing in real time the immunity systems kick in of Saudi Arabia, of Jordan, of Egypt, of all of Europe. I mean, when was the last time you heard a German foreign minister get up and say, no, Gaza will not be ethnically cleansed? It is, the immunity systems are kicking in. And so that's very important. It's very important to see someone say what they mean, to say what they plan to do openly, clearly, without any ambiguity, which is exactly what Trump is doing. And so, in fact, that has, I think, real benefits for those of us who care about human rights, who care about bringing an end to the apartheid regime in Israel and bringing an end to the genocidal onslaught on Gaza. Absolutely critical. And you're seeing it now. You're seeing the forces rally. For the first time, honestly, in my entire life, you're seeing the entire Arab world rally around the Palestinian cause. When has that ever happened? Can you recall the last time that happened?
Never, at the very least. I mean, my great fears are about, for example, West Bank annexation. I guess this is a good way to transition to talking about that, because that's Miriam Adelson's desire. That's why she gave Trump that $100 million. She was open about it. I mean, in her speech at that fundraiser in Bedminster, New Jersey, she was saying, I didn't even ask for the Golan Heights, and he gave it to me as a goodie, basically, last time around. It's not being reported very much, but Israel's violence in the West Bank has been escalating as the ceasefire has been tepidly holding in Gaza. What is your analysis of that dynamic?
Well, it's very clear, based on statements made by senior Israeli officials, that as a condition for agreeing to, I would call it a temporary ceasefire in Gaza, that they would be given the green light by the Trump administration to wage an all-out war in the West Bank, especially the northern West Bank, especially Jenin, especially the Jenin refugee camp. But you can expect that this will expand to Tulkarem, to the Nord Shams refugee camp, to Nablus, really pretty much everywhere in the West Bank. We're seeing Israeli military operations like we've never seen before. Really, I mean, I can't recall the last time we saw the kind of operation we've seen. Must have been probably 2002 in Jenin, when the Israeli military entered the Jenin refugee camp, going door to door and slaughtered dozens of Palestinians back in 2002 in that campaign. And we're seeing something similar now with the Israeli military entering the camp, ripping up all the roads. By the way, they did this already in July, so this is nothing fundamentally new. But it's very clear that this is a very targeted, a systematic campaign of rooting out Palestinian militant resistance in the West Bank. And it's having extreme consequences for the civilian population of the West Bank. They've increased the number of checkpoints and roadblocks in the West Bank from about 600 before October 7th. Now I think we're now up to about 900 or 1,000. They've imposed total lockdowns pretty much everywhere in the West Bank. You cannot go from Ramallah to Nablus. You cannot go from Jenin to Tulkarem. There are roadblocks and checkpoints preventing Palestinians from leaving their towns, cities, and refugee camps. We've also seen in recent months the Israeli military now using air power. Now, Hellfire missiles being being used in the West Bank. New military tactics, new military strategies. So it's a very, very worrying situation. And look,
can you talk a little bit more about that, Zach? Like that being such an escalation, because people that may not be as familiar with the distinction between like the West Bank and Gaza, Gaza's bombed all the time. The West Bank is bombed occasionally, but it's mostly this rolling violence and seizure of land and vigilantes and IDF people shooting people and killing them in a more targeted way.
The West Bank is divided into three areas. These three areas being Area A, B, and C as a result of the Oslo process. In Area C, which has about 150,000 Palestinians, Israeli soldiers and Israeli settlers have been terrorizing Palestinians on a daily basis for decades. and it's been ramping up in the past year. We've seen dozens, I think 24 communities uprooted and ethnically cleansed, primarily from Area C. We're talking more than 1,500 Palestinians ethnically cleansed from Area C in just the past 15 and a half months. Then you have Area B, places like Sebastia in the West Bank, which are now also increasingly coming under threat. We're talking about how many Palestinians in Area B? About 500,000. They're also now facing, these are the sort of semi-rural, small towns of the West Bank. They've been facing increasing attacks by settlers. And now, Area A, the area with the overwhelming majority of the population of the West Bank, the urban centers, Ramallah, Beit Lahem, Nablus, Jenin, Tulkarem, Hebron, Khalid, these areas are now facing a new level of violence, a level of violence that Palestinians in these areas have not seen in decades. These are areas like Jenin and Nablus, where the Israeli military is sending multiple, we're talking thousands of Israeli soldiers on the ground, ripping up streets, tearing up civilian infrastructure, destroying the water infrastructure, destroying hundreds of homes, destroying roads, destroying hospitals. In January, just last month, the Israeli military entered a hospital. I believe was it in Jenin, and killed 3 Palestinians. So these are undercover operations taken, carried out by the Israeli military in civilian areas. Dressed up as Palestinian civilians, carrying out the crime of perfidy in international law, which is feigning status as a civilian during armed hostilities in order to kill Palestinians. They're doing it in the West Bank. They've been doing it in Gaza, by the way, as well. Recall that in the Nusayrat refugee camp in this past summer, when when the Israeli military entered that refugee camp to rescue 4 Israeli hostages, they killed 274 Palestinians at the same time. And it was during that operation where they feigned status as both Palestinian civilians and as Palestinian aid workers. And so they're doing that in Gaza, they're doing that in the West Bank as well. It's a very frightening time right now for everyone in the West Bank. Not only because they're dramatically expanding the military campaigns in the West Bank, both in the tactics and in the methods and in the strategies in Area A, B, and C, as we already said. But we're also now getting a confirmation that the plan really is annexation. I mean, we've known this all along, but if you follow the reports of B'Tselem and if you follow the reports of Peace Now, every week, every month, the Israeli civilian administration takes another step. And people think annexation is like one day it's not annexed, the next day it is. That's not how it works.
Right.
It's an incremental process. Every week, every month, there's a new policy, a new regulation, which gradually incorporates the West Bank into the Israeli civilian administration.
And it was announced this morning that the Israeli military has been told by higher-ups to begin to plan to remove those remaining Palestinians from Gaza, and what that removal looks like is going to be incredibly violent. Can you react, I guess, to that instruction and give us some historical context about how many times Israel has tried to ethnically cleanse Gaza and they've failed? So, bad record.
Well, first of all, what we hear and what we see from Gaza is that Palestinians have no intent on leaving. Yep. And so any kind of relocation effort is going to be forcible. It's not going to be voluntary. And Israel always blurs the lines between forced relocation and voluntary relocation. They force Palestinians historically, as you pointed out. Israel has attempted to relocate, i.e. ethnically cleanse Palestinians from Gaza on countless occasions. They tried to do it in 1948. It was through American pressure. 1948, it was through American pressure. The American most senior diplomat lived in Israel at the time told the Israeli military, this is the end of the war in late 48, early 1949. No, you're going to withdraw your troops from Gaza Strip and Sinai now. And it was only because of that American pressure in 1948-49 that Gaza wound up in the hands of Egypt rather than Israel. And then in 1956, when Israel reinvaded the Gaza Strip, they went on a campaign. They slaughtered 150 Palestinians in Khan Yunis. They slaughtered another 100 in Rafah with the goal to incentivize flight. The same thinking that they adopted in 1948 was you slaughter a few hundred here, incentivize the rest to leave. They did the same thing in 1956, except 1956 was not 1948, and the Palestinians did not leave. Only about 1,000 left. after those massacres. And then when the Israeli prime minister at the time realized he could not compel Palestinians to leave by force, they started to develop plans. To figure out ways of ridding Gaza of its Palestinian refugees. When they reoccupied Gaza in 1967, they did the same thing. They developed a plan to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And that, I mean, this was at the highest levels. The Israeli cabinet met on June 18th and June 19th, 1967. They made a few decisions, one of which was we will annex Gaza after we're able to rid the population of most of its refugees. That was the decision made in June 1967, a week after Israel conquered that territory. And then from the period June 1967 to December 1967, Israel settled on a plan to depopulate the Strip. And basically from January from the end of the war in 67 until about the end of 1969, 1970, Israel compelled 70,000 Palestinians in Gaza to leave. And then from 1970 to 1972, Israel realized they weren't going to be able to compel more than that by through these incentive programs. And so they did it by force. And Ariel Sharon enters the Gaza Strip in 1971 with a plan to, quote unquote, thin out the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip. They enter the refugee. They first entered Jabalia in 1971. They displace hundreds of families. They expel 12,000 Palestinian family members of fighters. So these are innocent civilians by Israel's own admission. They expel them to Sinai. They continue in 1972. They try more attempts in 1974 and 1976. But the whole plan all along, well into the 1990s, is to rid Gaza of its refugees. Anyone who leaves the Gaza Strip or the West Bank for more than 3 years is not able to return. They lose their residency rights. Israel has been on a constant effort over the past 56 years in Gaza and the West Bank to figure out ways of getting them out, of pushing them out, because Zionism is a political philosophy that says, how do we create a Jewish state in a land that's mostly non-Jewish? How do we create Jewish domination and Jewish control in a land that is mostly non-Jewish? Well, the easiest way of doing it is just getting rid of all those non-Jews.
By killing or by forcible transfer. And that is what Zionism is, folks. And I think people are starting to wake up to the contradictions of what liberal Zionism is and what we need to do. Although we still need one, and I was saying this before the show, the evolution in this conversation is an endorsement of a one democratic state from the river to the sea. And we have still yet to see a politician in this country make that case, even the good ones that are standing up for against genocide. That is what our solution, the solution needs to be, like South Africa. It must be imposed upon them.
One person, one vote to the United States of America is a great idea in the US, in South Africa. It's a great idea apparently in every country of the world except for one. There's only one country in the world where the United States apparently believes that one person should not equal one vote, and that's the state of Israel, where you have 3.5 million Palestinians in the West Bank, and you have 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, so you're talking about 5.5 million Palestinians who are apparently not real people. They don't deserve a vote.
They don't get to govern themselves. We get to decide who governs them. I mean, we get to decide who's going to be the governing authority, apparently, of Gaza. That was consistent with Biden and is consistent with Trump. They're too savage to govern themselves. Don't you understand, Zach? So
it's remarkable just seeing President Trump refer to the destruction of Gaza. It's a demolition site in front of the person sitting 1 foot, 2 feet away from the person who made it a demolition site with U.S. weapons.
Yep.
It's just, you're talking about the destruction of Gaza in the abstract, using the passive voice with the person who destroyed it sitting in front of you. It's a level of gaslighting and shameful behavior that I honestly just cannot recall any American president doing that kind of thing really in my lifetime.
Yeah, I guess the rule of thumb is that if there's a new low, Trump's gonna sink to it and create a new standard, within the next few days or something like that. But Zachary Foster, everybody, please check out Palestine Nexus, the newsletter. As you can hear, Zachary has done so much great work in archiving this history that, frankly, through genocide, the Israeli government is trying to erase. So I really appreciate your work, and thanks for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, folks, with that, we're going to wrap up the free part of this program and head into the fun half, where we'll be taking your calls and reading your IMs. Matt, what is happening on Left Reckoning?
First I want to make a point about the AI and education thing that we're seeing.
Sure.
I'll put myself on camera because, this is a long-term, I think, issue with using technology to alienate people from education. Scantron tests are technological alienation that are basically making up for, if you look at elite educations, I looked at apparently UCLA has a medical school that does pass-fail, because that's really what the relationship should be between a teacher and a student. It shouldn't be through some sort of multiple choice tests or something like that could be gamed, or you could have the answers to, or you could now use AI on it, or you could just be a good test taker. It should be like an actual relationship with this teacher and a student, and we've gotten so far away from that this is like I keep saying, we're on the we part of a slippery slope on a lot of these things that we've been in for a long time. I just wanted to make that point. Also, Left Reckoning, we'll have a show for you, patreon.com/Left Reckoning, a Sunday show. And let's see, I cannot think back to what we did. I do too many shows, so I can't even remember what I did this week.
Check it out, regardless. Yeah. On ESPN today, Bradley and I will be back, and we will be giving our picks for the Super Bowl and talking about the NBA trade deadline. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
Alexander Avina was on talking about Trump in Mexico. That seems like a million years ago.
All right. Do we have Brandon and Binder? We're waiting for Binder, but we may have Brandon, who got a haircut. I can see it. Everybody's going to be able to see it soon. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, buddy? Brandon?
No, we can't. We should maybe go to the break.
Okay, wait. We can't hear you. All right. We'll go to the break. We'll fix it. Okay. See you in the fun half.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the Majority Report.
Wait, look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset?
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and...
that's what we call it in the biz.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Well, look at how sad he's become now. You shouldn't even talk about it because I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
wow.
Sushi.
I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind.
She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Boy. Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
I had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour. I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
It's not a fun job.
Tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
Willy Wonka tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing.
Real thing. What's that offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered a tour?
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
That offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's
poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion.
Real thing. That's
poker with the boys. That offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's
poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, buddy.
Tour, sushi and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Deluded.
Sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.
Sam has like the weight of the world on his shoulders. Sam doesn't want to do this show anymore. It was so much easier when the Majority Report was just you. You were happy.
Let's change the subject.
Right.
Rangers and Knicks doing great.
Now shut up. I don't want people saying reckless things on your program.
That's
No.
one of the most difficult parts about this show.
This is a pro-killing podcast.
I'm thinking maybe it's time we bury the hatchet.
Left is best. Pilot
Tour.
Don't be foolish and don't fucking tweet at me and don't bitch. The way Emma has cucked all of these people, love it.
That's where my heart is, so I wrote my honors thesis about it.
Oh,
Sorry,
she
finance.
wrote an honest thesis. I guess I should hand the main mic to you now.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
We already fund Israel, dude. Are you against that?
That's a tougher question I have an answer to.
Incredible theme song.
Hi, Bumbler.
Emma Vigeland, absolutely one of my favorite people. Actually, not just in the game, like period.
We are back, and we are joined by our friends, Brandon Sutton and Matt Binder. Opening up the phone lines, by the way, 646-257-3920 is the number. Binder, what's happening on your shows?
Sure. So this week on Doomed, I talked about covered the Doge boys and Elon Musk's ransacking of the government. Tune in at youtube.com/Matt Binder. Also, at my newsletter, which has unofficially launched at disruptionist.com, I broke the story of how a bunch of crypto promoters were able to hijack old Donald Trump tweets in order to stick their meme coin links where you could purchase their tokens. So you were able to see, Donald Trump's tweets with a call to action to buy a meme coin that he had no association with. So you can check that out at disruptionist.com.
All right, check that out. Brandon, what's happening on the discourse?
Well, first of all, I want to say it's important that you distinguish the meme coins that he has nothing to do with versus the meme coins that he has something to do with.
Right, well, right.
Now
If
we live
you're
in a
going to
scam
invest
nation.
in a scam, you should know who's scamming you. And this one is not Donald Trump.
Right.
I like a little mystery in my scams. I like the whole, that's maybe me. I think it's a little sexier. But yeah, on the discourse, I hope you all are watching the streams. Honestly, I'm not the one saying this, but a lot of people are saying this, that if you're not there, you're square. And I would never make aspersions as to people's shape, but it might be true. Yesterday, I don't know if you guys heard of that UFC fighter, Bryce Mitchell.
Yeah.
He's the one who was like praising Hitler on his new podcast, Arc Insanity. But we watched a little bit of that. Not only that, though, he was also on the Patrick Bet David podcast because he is just a conspiracy theorist, generally speaking. So Patrick Bet David interviewed him about the shape of the earth and his beliefs and how it's flat. So we watched a little bit of that. It was very funny. And then we also touched on Trump's tariffs and his assault on the Department of Education. Speaking of like making America a scam nation, making America stupider is a really good way to make sure that people are more susceptible to scams. But yeah, it was a great time. If you're curious about the shape of the earth, I would always suggest coming to me as opposed to going to UFC fighters or Patrick Bet David. But yeah.
You know what I just figured out what we need that a lot of these guys, it'd be useful for the earth is if we had a giant set of calipers that we could use to measure the earth. And then all of these people, we could combine the race science with the flat eartherism and finally solve some mysteries.
Well, I mean, Bryce Mitchell's skull is definitely flat based on that, based on that interview. And the time he got punched in the face by Josh Emmett. But yeah,
sorry, we're having issues with the phone lines. We're fixing it, but just wanted to let you know that's what I'm working on right now.
That's what the sound is, guys.
Yeah, sorry guys, we're figuring it out right now. People saying there's no phone, people can't hear. How about now? Anyone on the IMs? Hopefully we fixed it. let us know if you can or can't hear us, please.
Brandon, was the maybe I misheard, but when was the interview that Bet Davis did with that UFC guy? Was it before or after his Hitler comments?
Before the Hitler comments. He's done a ton of interviews. I honestly think that like he's just I guess I would have to assume Joe Rogan adjacent podcast guest. He has a lot of crazy beliefs. So he does the circuit.
Right.
And
I just thought it'd be funny if like that UFC fighter was all over the news because of his comments on Hitler. And then Bet Davis invites him on the show and is like, so let's address the elephant in the room. Your membership in the Flat Earth Society. Can you please discuss?
I don't see how you could believe in Hitler in the earth being flat, because everyone knows that Hitler lives in the hollow at the center of the earth with King Kong.
That's true.
I've been working on fixing these phones, and I just tuned back in and heard that Hitler's apparently living in the core of the earth. I wish I had the context for this conversation, but
Right. Well,
I think it's self-explanatory.
Yeah,
right. Brandon and I are just breaking news, and you missed it. We did the research. We did the.
But Patrick Bet David did nothing to kind of debate him about the shape of the earth. Not that I think you should, but his one point of contention in the beginning was that like children prefer to play with balls, and so the earth must be a globe, was what Patrick Bet David said. And I was like, wait, what?
Still seemingly some issues with people trying to hear on the phone line. So just, but I don't know. It's some people say can hear you guys fine. Everyone sounds good. Other people say they can't hear anymore. So I'm not sure. Maybe we can ask Kyle what's going on there. Sorry about that, folks. Maybe we'll just take a call really quickly to see if it's working. Calling from a 501 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from? 501? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, 501? Hello? 501?
Seems like we have an answer to that question.
All right, phone system's not working. I'm sorry, guys. I can't, in good conscience, tell people to hang on right now because we're having some technical difficulties. Apologies. I'm turning on the voicemail. So, all right, let's just, I've been wanting to do this for a few days, so I want to get it out of the way right now. So this YouTuber, Blonde Politics, did this like awesome video essay in the week after the election about Mark Andreessen and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and all of these dark mega, basically tech billionaires, and their obsession with Curtis Yarvin and what their vision is. And I want to play an excerpt of it, maybe 5 minutes, but people should really go over to her page to check out this full video essay. I was reading the comments and people were like, they thought you were a conspiracy theorist right after the election, and now this is exactly what's happening. She goes step by step into, J.D. Vance's role and his connection with these folks. But I just thought this was so well done because this is exactly, you can see, the Yarvin and his ideology currently being implemented within the first few weeks of the Trump administration.
Are being funneled into these projects as we speak. This is the website for Praxis, a network state funded by Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Balaji, and Sam Altman, through their shared capital fund, Pronomus, which is dedicated to funding the creation of network cities. The website for Praxis says, as local communities dissolve and nation states stumble, network states will ascend. The next global superpower will be a network state. The next America will be on-chain. The stated goal of Praxis is to build a corporate government with a global footprint. It will have territories all over the world. Crypto will be its currency. The modern global system, once the greatest power in the history of man, has become a brittle, jerry-rigged contraption incapable of carrying out the most basic functions. As these governing institutions continue to degrade, people will come to realize that no one is truly on their side. As nation states falter, network states become inevitable. I should mention that Pronomis Capital is funding the creation of other network states, many of which are further along than Praxis. Some examples are Prospera in Honduras, Afropolitan, Etana, and small farm cities in Africa, Metropolis in Palau, and I think Young Drunk City is planned for South Asia. On Pronomis' website, they claim decades of research on economic development has shown that the primary determinant of prosperity is the quality of a country's laws and the integrity of its courts, administrators, and other legal institutions. When institutions are outmoded, corrupted, or failing, the result is untold human suffering. Yet upgrading national institutions is notoriously difficult. Our solution? Build the cities of tomorrow. Right now, they are creating cloud communities, virtual nations. Once they have access to land, they will get their citizens to migrate to that city. Have a look at the pledge that you sign when you join Praxis, which you can join right now, by the way. Pronomis isn't actually Peter Thiel's first flirtation with exiting democracy either. In 2009, he funded the Seasteading Institute.
I want to say some things on why I think seasteading is not just possible or desirable, but why it is actually necessary.
The Seasteading Institute envisioned building these floating cities in the ocean outside of government's jurisdiction where billionaires could live and create as they saw fit. This idea kind of ran out of steam because nobody wants to live at sea, especially not billionaires, which means they need land. But how do we get from a nation state to a network state?
And this is actually related to a fundamental concept in political science, the concept of voice versus exit. If a company or a country is in decline, you can try voice or you can try exit. Voice is basically changing the system from within, whereas exit is leaving to create a new system, a new startup, or to join a competitor sometimes.
There's another way that Balaji also talks about how this could possibly happen. He calls it tech Zionism.
Right. You know, what I'm really calling for is something like tech Zionism, a movement supported by a global network to take back territory in the city, floor by floor, street by street, block by block, policeman by policeman. You have a foothold of private property, and you have a group membership of Great Tribe membership and private property. You also issue T-shirts. The tribal lens is like a virtual reality filter. Every single thing can be tagged as gray or blue in the city. I mean, like literally. So gray is the future, red is the past, blue is the present. So blue stands against both the past and the future. They're against both the self-driving cars, and they don't want to go back to the 50s. They prefer OnlyFans, Me Too, BLM, Ukraine. The hard part is to take control of the streets. How can you fence off a street and make clear that it's under great control? Take total control of your neighborhood, push out all blues, tell them they're as unwelcome as just as blues ethnically cleanse me out of San Francisco. Like, push out all blues, who has lost some territory in the cloud. They still control the land. Once Gray starts taking back control of the land, that they're really going to howl. As they start losing, they're going to whistle for backup from California and eventually DC. Okay, they're going to try to get executive orders or things like that, which means you're going to need to have sympathizers at the level of California and DC who will side with you enough to block those actions, number one. And or number two, you actually get to the level of a sanctuary city and you say, I dare you.
Keep in mind, actions like this are already being attempted.
That's a good excerpt, I think, to give people a sense of what this vision is. And I watched that yesterday. Very chilling. People should check out the full video because it's around a half hour long and she goes into more detail. But can we pull up this other article from Gil Duran? This also goes into it a little bit. How all of these guys are obsessed with Curtis Yarvin. And you could hear, we'll get into some of the buzzwords that they talk about. The other day, Crystal Ball sent this to me, and I just thought, I think people should check it out. I think Crystal, Kyle, and friends are having this author on their show. But Yarvin previously had something where he dubbed it back in 2012. This is the second paragraph. Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel's House philosopher, called for something he dubbed rage. Retire all government employees. The idea, take over the United States government and gut the federal bureaucracy, then replace civil servants with political loyalists who would answer to a CEO-type leader, Yarvin likened to a dictator. And as this author points out, Elon Musk's Doge is just a rebranded version of rage. So that essayist really went into, did a great job of, I would say, laying out the insanity of their vision. I mean, that all that talk about tech Zionism, we've been ethnically cleansed from blue cities. You can see how Yarvin's vision of being post-democracy, having a monarch, essentially, somebody who can just solve all these problems, and democracy is way too messy. We can just exit, or we can create our own reality here. How identical that has been to, I would say, Elon Musk's actions over the past few weeks, which is trying to get access to the treasury to illegally so that he can take it apart for his own ends and build his own utopian, almost tech feudalist network state future. That is what he's trying to do. Implement Curtis Yarvin's vision of anti-democracy and using like this kind of utopian justification for a ransacking of our government and of our institutions for a select few. And that involves mass surveillance. That involves a cutting into people's individual rights and suppression of dissent. And I think we're seeing all of that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would only add, I think, a lot of this is just the ultimate endpoint or end goal of neoliberals too, or at least like the modern neoliberal era, that this government should be run like a company. And when you sort of index in like the way Silicon Valley works and the trendy companies of the 2010s, like tech unicorn startups, that those companies were run like little mini dictatorships. Look at like Adam Newman at WeWork. They were run in such a way as, the CEO was treated like some kind of golden god because he had run up the valuation to $1 billion, usually with a false bill of sales that was entirely related to their own like charisma, a la Elon Musk, only to watch it like basically crumble to dust, but to be able to like leave on a golden parachute. And despite all of the companies that didn't work out that way, our society, at least for a while, still like held up that kind of like, tech billionaire CEO as like the good billionaire. They were like the justification for like our capitalist system because they provided all the googads and the gadgets and the apps that power your phone. But I think, and this is what we've heard them say, not just the influx of Chinese tech supremacy into the world, but also just the overwhelming sentiment that like all billionaires are bad, not just some billionaires, but including tech billionaires. They know they just have developed the same kind of victim complex, or they've had their victim complex ignited, the same complex that like it unites all conservatives. And this is just like a conservative ideological position that once democracy fails to once a democracy fails to reify their view of the way the world should be, they just want to get rid of it. Like democracy should only be to like vote people who agree with me into office. And once it no longer does that, then they should just appoint a Peter Thiel to be CEO.
Right.
Yeah, I played that Balaji Srinivasan thing about the grays and the blues and stuff when I talked with Olivia Jutel on Left Reckoning. The venture capitalists plan their exit. And when they talk about exit, that they're talking about it as the financial parasites that they are, which means we're going to exit this investment with all of this profit because we weren't actually here to create a good business. We were here for the money. And, that's what they're there for. But I also want to say about Curtis Yarvin. Corey Pine in the October 9th had a piece in the Baffler, the Moldbug Variations, about Peter Thiel's relationship with Curtis Yarvin. And the truth is that they're actually not that much different, Curtis Yarvin and Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel should not be understood as a genius venture capitalist. He is a culture warrior, ready to bring that book up, Bradley, who struck it lucky in the markets and now gets a reputation because he got monopoly profits through PayPal of being some sort of lord of creation or innovation. But this is what he was doing with David O. Sachs, that they might be familiar, in the 90s. The diversity myth, multiculturalism, political intolerance on campus. Yarvin also is a person who got investment from Thiel. This is where this money comes from for them to play with. It's them looking to all this money for these sort of political purposes. These are politics guys first, culture warriors first, and venture capitalists sort of like geniuses is just like basically an accident of history because they were able to put down money like Pierre Omidyar, like Elon Musk, a lot of people, because it turns out it's not actually that genius. And maybe the people who could first move were at an advantage when the internet was coming out that, yeah, we're gonna have to move money through it. So they all get to put all this money towards their favorite pet projects, including their pet Curtis Yarvin, who is like their in-house, I guess, ideas guy.
Right.
Also-
they can outsource their kind of like intellectual heft onto him and basically say, oh, look at this thinker. He speaks like...
We're just business guys.
Yeah.
But there's this other guy who we just think has good ideas. No, you're the same freak.
And what disturbs me about Yarvin in particular is also the fact that he's been interviewed and he's talked about how we are ripe right now in our political environment that is filled with irony. He says it's in that video essay too, we've never been in a more ironic moment in history. And it makes the simple solutions that I'm proposing a lot more palatable, is what economy is entirely captured by capitalism and being manipulated by guys like Elon Musk, who purchased the top journalistic communications platform in the world, arguably, in Twitter, which is where that basically that was what that was for. Deprioritize outlets like the New York Times, who I have a ton of issues with, but this was an attack on real. Am I frozen? On information, and I'll fix that in a second. But Brandon, go ahead. I know you want to jump in.
I was going to say Matt's point is, well taken. I think a lot of what they're rebelling against too, despite just having like conservative and neo-fascist tendencies, is that no one thinks they're geniuses anymore, really. Like the culture has shifted in such a way that people don't think billionaires, even tech billionaires, are geniuses. There have been too many scams. There have been too many failures. There's been too many Elizabeth Holmeses and FBSs and like Adam Newmans. There have been too many documentaries. Deep Seeks. There's been too many things that have disabused people of that notion that every tech billionaire you see is actually like, Steve Wozniak or Steve Jobs or any of the Steves, right? Or Bill Gates even, right? So, not to mention a lot of them, Bill Gates has connections with Epstein and stuff like that. There's just been a mass disillusionment as it comes not just to wealth, but also the wealth derived from the tech industry, which used to just be something people fetishized a lot more. But I will say, despite all of that, and also the tech Zionism, that was not what I would have called it, obviously. I absolutely support them building a country somewhere where people like Peter Thiel and JD Vance and all of the tech sycophants live. It would
the problem with that though
they don't displace anybody. They don't displace anybody.
But the problem with that is those examples of overseas, like connected cities or whatever they were called. That's just like where they can do it now. Like their real goal is obviously is like the country they want to build is right here. Like this is what they want. Yeah. And they want to just take it over. And
because they can't actually build a utopia without this. They can only like the parasites they are strap onto actual innovation.
And infrastructure.
And I just want to point out too that like this is like I know Brandon said that like the mask is off for a lot of these people in terms of like what they actually contribute and how people, the average person feels about them, which I'm not so sure it's that positive, that going in that positive direction quite yet. But in the tech world, this is pervasive, that they are so important and so good. Like pull up this tweet on the screen if you can. I just posted it in the chat from one John Shedletsky. And I want you to read the tweet before I tell you who John Shedletsky is.
Sure.
So just bring it up. Like this is a worldview where they think they are above you, me, and everyone. So here's John Shedletsky. This was in response to one of the Doge boys, his friends, like defending him for he's a smart guy. I put my full trust in him rifling through your personal data that's held by the federal government.
Let me guess, founder and bio.
Wait for it. John Shedletsky says, Silicon Valley built the modern world. Why shouldn't we run it? Now, can you click on his profile so you can see what John Shedletsky did to build the modern world?
I'm excited. Workplace management app.
Go down. Even better than that. Keep going. Go down. Go down. Go down. Going a
Which
little
one?
bit. Zoom
His
in,
bio
zoom
or
in
the-
right there. That first one right there in the bio.
Oh, Roblox.
First employee at Roblox. That's
Child
the
labor.
modern world he built. The first employee at Roblox is this guy's claim to fame. I looked him up. That's the entirety of his, that's what he's known for. That's his career. Building Roblox, the video game that's known for being an attraction for pedophiles to go to because it is the easiest way for them to have access to kids. There are numerous reports from various organizations about how Roblox is a pedophile and grooming haven. And Roblox is built in such a way where they can't stop it. That's the modern world that these guys have so proudly built. And that's what they want to take over with. That contribution to society.
Right. And I mean, isn't that a libertarian vision anyway, right? They're always concerned about age of consent.
It goes what I was saying, though. It's like Silicon Valley didn't build the modern world. It didn't even build the internet. If anything, it made the internet worse. It created like an enclosed internet, like an internet where like everyone is siloed into various different social media platforms where like there used to be an internet, like, I mean, people under 20 probably don't remember it. The internet used to be a fun place where you could go to websites and like play games, like little flash games, like newgrounds.com, although, you know, I'd have its own problems too. Now the internet is a series of like social media platforms that are running like psychological experiments on you to give you depression so you shop more. And like then that's the Silicon Valley model for the internet and for the world is just like the Silicon Valley model for the world is just an expansion of that belief that there should just be little techno fiefdoms where like Microsoft rules and, you know, Facebook rules and Twitter rules and, you know, Instagram, I guess is the famous thing as Facebook or whatever, has like their own little like area that they are like, you know, able to lord over like they are online. But the internet certainly hasn't gotten better by nature of like Silicon Valley's influence on it. It's gotten a lot worse. It's just, you know, a lot easier to earn money on it, I suppose, but that's not necessarily for the best.
Right.
I mean, look what the Silicon Valley model has done to like society in general, even beyond just like our like experience online. Look at what Uber has done to people who were, you know, had jobs with a union and things like that. And look what Airbnb has done with commodifying even further, like turning any sort of property into a hotel space without any of the protections you get from a hotel. The same with Uber. You lose all those workers have zero protection, zero rights.
That's their innovation
economy now. That's the Silicon Valley world because they didn't create taxis. They didn't create rentals. They didn't create hotels. They created the model that further commoditized it and took away any sort of consumer protections that were had and any sort of worker protections for the people working in these industries had.
Yep.
And they basically hid it all by saying, we're an app company. We're an app company.
Yeah, I mean that it is. That's a great point. And like, there's other parts of this piece that I encourage people to read. But you know, Yarvin talks about how Trump should amass an army of people that are, quote, ideologically trained and Trump loyal, quote, ninjas that will be unleashed on the federal bureaucracy. And that, I guess, is really my closing point on this, which is that Project 2025 and this techno feudalist, anarcho-capitalist vision where I guess, you know, cryptocurrency rules the day as well, should not be spoken about as distinct from the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 and the Republican apparatus. They are now merged into one. And their agendas have merged into one, which is the dismantling of the administrative state, of worker protections, of the functioning of our government, of programs like Medicaid that give health care to 71 million people who are at a lower income threshold or who have disabilities. They want to make, like, it's like, you know, it's like Game of Thrones to them. And everybody else, it's just, you know, the humanity of the people that the government would rule over. That's kind of not their concern.
I never got super deep into Game of Thrones, but I imagine there's a lot of people who get sort of on the outs of the core tiers and have to eat a little shit, or at least pretend like they haven't been completely decimated. And it's interesting to me that this entire anti-war, Trump hates war sort of contingent, and then Trump is pushing in Bibi Netanyahu's chair as he floats, taking over Gaza for Bibi. Also, on the domestic populism front, there's this sort of Bannonite, we're the pro-worker party now, because frankly, the Democrats have abandoned that to their shame. But Steve Bannon has to contend with the fact that it's not him calling the shots, it is literally foreign tech billionaires, including Elon Musk. And here's Doubt That talking to him, and it's just interesting to get his sort of spin on it.
Underestimate just how weird the long-term ambitions of a lot of people deeply involved in Silicon Valley are, especially around artificial intelligence, and that there is this sort of.
Balaj and the network state. Let's talk about that. They're not weird.
Well,
they're radicals. They're radicals.
That's a yeah, the network state we can save for the next time I have you on. For now, let's just focus on.
I'm going to be invited.
You're going to be invited.
We got breaking news. Bannon's actually going to be invited back.
We're going to every week, man. So listen. So the transhumanism stuff, though. So to me, it seemed like one of the things that pulled Elon Musk into the conservative coalition was that while he's certainly not a religious conservative, but he is a kind of weirdo humanist, right? He likes the human race. He wants the human race to continue.
Stop.
No. Okay.
Stop.
So you don't see, to me it seems like Musk is in one group.
Musk is
just as transhumanist as the rest of them.
No, since Edison, maybe our greatest applied engineer.
Okay.
Agreed.
See, positive.
Isn't it dig that he said? Isn't it dig that he said Edison and not Tesla?
That's an interesting point, because maybe he's also
because Tesla fans think Edison is and I think it's correct, like
applied engineer,
not necessarily the smarter of the two, and then was a lot of stolen valor. Sorry, Matt. Go on.
Well, I mean, Edison, was more applicable. Tesla's sort of like exciting thing, but it's interesting here. I just find it fascinating that Bannon there's a lot of boisterosity that impresses people about it, because he'll call GOP pussies, and then he'll go off against Balaji Srinivasan, and then this complete capitulation. I mean, we can let him go. Maybe not a complete capitulation, but he does need to glaze Elon a little bit with this BS about all these guys. Let's just play a little bit further, see how he comes back from that.
As transhumanist as the rest of them.
No, since Edison, maybe our greatest applied engineer.
Okay.
He is a genius in that level. Agreed. And so he looks at the thing as all kind of mathematical equations and from engineering in a big brain. When he puts on something, he can solve it. He is the most prominent of that crowd that's warned against artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence. It's one of the reasons he and the Altman at OpenAI have had so many big fights. Besides
not big fans of each other. Yep.
They hate each other. I mean, and part of that's personal, but part of it is philosophical. And Brother Musk is probably the farthest down the line, because he's the most advanced in chipping. So I think Neuralink is one of the most aggressive about Homo sapien 1.0 or Homo sapien 2.0. Elon is at the tip of this, and Elon is actually on an applied engineering basis, not bullshit talk. He is probably the farthest advanced for transhumanism. People have to understand, in the life, and I say life, next 10 years of your audience, we're going to be facing a dilemma for yourself and your kids. Do you enhance yourself? Do you enhance yourself either by genetic engineering? Do you
oh my God!
By advanced chip design plugged into you? Do you advance yourself by artificial intelligence?
Please, can you pause it? I'm sorry. Please, I encourage everyone in MAGA to try to advance themselves right now.
Hurry up.
By putting a chip in their brain.
Get the head start.
Can you please be the first? Please, men on the moon. The first man to, you can be the elevated human beings, the next level of our race. Be the astronauts of our time. Put the Neuralink chip in your brain. I encourage it. Bannon can start.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like it's very interesting. He's supposed to be supposedly the sort of counter to all this stuff, and yet he can't help but like sort of take his hat off to it, because right now Elon's the daddy.
Yes.
And Bannon needs to flatter that guy, that weird freak who wants to put a techno chip into your head to process your thoughts. He has to defend him.
Or we could make humanity, like, we could choose a different route and maybe give everybody health care and free education. And
yeah, I don't think we need all this money that venture capitalists have to play with all this shit. It's very clearly better directed by the state towards all the innovations that all these people have been skating off, like this internet, cell phone stuff. Who made GPS, you idiot?
Yeah.
Like, who invented all this stuff? It was Uncle Sam and other governments and their higher education sort of grants.
This is what I mean too. Like a lot of this stuff, like tech, Silicon Valley is just used to sell capitalism to you and deregulation to you, generally speaking. Yep. And as you're, deregulating society to facilitate, the techno future, you're, devaluing the public sector in ways that you don't even understand. Like, I can admit that Gattaca may be the future, but to not allow for the fact that some of the biggest advancements in the human lifespan, right, have been articulated or caused by like the public sector, whether it be vaccines or whether it be like, mass public health campaigns like anti-smoking in America. Narcan. These are things that the public, the public sector did. And talking about like, brain chips and Elon's death cars is just a way for people to get sold a bill of sales about like our system that distracts them from the fact that like we're living shorter lives now, not because we don't have brain chips, not because we don't have, not because we don't have cars.
Because we have seed oil in our food or whatever.
Yeah, it's because, we allow corporations to pollute, our environment. We allow the army to pollute our environment. We don't provide universal health care to people. We don't provide a minimum standard of living to people. Those are the things that keep our society behind. Not that we're not giving enough money to billionaires, but, this is just the way for them.
Lib, it's the seed oil, Lib.
It's the seed oil.
Evan from
it's
Portland
the Red
said,
15 or whatever it's called that they put in the Kool-Aid.
That stuff is bad for you. the artificial coloring is bad for you. Yeah, that stuff is bad for you. But again, that's because America is deregulated. It's to allow companies to poison you for cheaper. And like that's what people instinctually understand that's what's going on in America. They just think that the solution is to have a good billionaire fight the bad billionaires because that's what's been sold to them by like neoliberalism.
Right. We need our Captain America. I mean, it's silly, but it's also just like, I think people are more susceptible to looking for simple solutions in a leader like Trump because our systems work so poorly and like there is no responsiveness.
The Marxist tradition has a long sort of theory about Bonapartism, which is when a leader comes through to cut through the contradictions of two hollowed out, decrepit parties. And it is something kind of interesting to me that the GOP has the House, the Senate, the presidency, the Supreme Court, and they're having Elon Musk take point on all this shit.
Mm-hmm. Hogtown. I let my 9-year-old son play Roblox once while I watched him, and a grown man tried talking to him within 45 minutes to get his name and address. No joke.
Wow.
So, to your point, Bender.
I read that study.
Free speech. That's the world they want to build.
You gotta get your kid on Dark Souls. That's a single player game. He won't have time.
Connected. What was the name of the city? Their network city, connected city. What is it called again?
Praxis.
Pronobos.
Praxis, whatever they were calling it. See, in Praxis,
or maybe Praxis is the vehicle to build it
or whatever. Yeah, but whatever.
They're just such nerds.
See, in their world, your child won't even need to get onto an online platform, be accosted by a creepy old man. They can be groomed in real time by anyone right off the streets who'll just go up to them and it'll be fine because that's the connected world that they want to build. That's their world.
No, like the groomer can send their like automated Tesla taxi to your house directly.
Right.
They can just they can like link their brain chip to your child's brain chip, and they can just like, you don't even need to tell me your name and address. No need for ASL. I'll just have my Tesla Cybercab, my Robovin come
Yeah.
pick you up.
The unmarked, creepy, white, free candy van will in the future be a self-driving Cybertruck.
Yeah, exactly. Oh.
Andrew from DC said, absolutely no one in the private sector innovated more than Bell Labs in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they were only able to do that because the government gave them a tightly controlled monopoly and in exchange forced them to make all their patents public.
That's right. And look, of course, there were certain things that Ma Bell got in, and maybe like people will point out like, oh, Ma Bell wasn't letting you do this with your phone line. They were cutting down on innovation. The truth is that we've not seen any sort of significant innovation, especially looking like at the 5G rollout, that sort of thing, by the privatization of all of this stuff and going away from. There's a lot of antitrust has a lot of fans these days. Lena Khan, of course, one of the stars of politics. There are certain things that don't need to be broken up for competition. There are certain things that are natural monopolies that should be under the provenance of the national government.
Yep.
We don't even have cool Silicon Valley doesn't even make like cool toys anymore.
I know.
If you go
R&D is expensive. You need to be a monopoly to have the money to do it.
Like if you go to Japan or South Korea or like parts of Asia, they have Tamagotchis and cool gadgets. Everything Silicon Valley tries to make now is like, I hate to say like some kind of like scheme or scam. It's, you have like a handful of people who drop out of MIT and they make like a new app that they're just hoping to have bought out by Microsoft or Tesla or some company so that it can be buried and you'll never see it again. And they get like a cushy job or a cushy like payout package from Tesla or at Tesla. And that's just it. Like, so much of what Silicon Valley produces now are things you will either never see or like, get rich quick schemes or like intended just for like a quick buyout, like Juicero or something like that.
But also that world for them is changing too. Like you're absolutely 100% correct that was the modern day tech success scheme. You create some really stupid thing that goes viral really fast, doesn't even have to make any money. In fact, it could lose a ton of money, but just because you're bringing in an enormous amount of users from your free product, you all of a sudden have $1 billion valuation, and then you just sell it to one of the bigger tech companies and you sit back and relax. But that's all drying up now because so many of these companies have been bought out and then have ended up producing nothing. And it's just in terms of revenue at all down the road. So now you just have these same companies that are making money and they buy a company and they're like, wait, this isn't producing me any additional revenue. And then they're losing money. And now that's not the quick way to get rich anymore in Silicon Valley, which is probably why they're now turning their eyesight towards taking over things like the government.
Seth in Hollywood says, Emma, please keep pushing on, or I would think you mean pulling on that thread about the number of Palestinians Trump threw out the other day. It's not about believing him. It's that the 1.7 to 1.8 million is such a narrow and specific range. Trump doesn't pull a number like 1.7 out of his ass. Yeah, that's my hypothesis at this current moment is that, Trump is just such a dummy and so undisciplined that he may have accidentally let slip the intelligence that they have about how many Palestinians have been slaughtered, because the deficit between the 2.3 million that were previously cited and the 1.7 to 1.8 million that he cites, at least 500,000, I can believe it. We know that it is north of 180,000, according, I guess that was to the UN. And then in October, there was a group of 99 American doctors, nurses, medical workers that wrote to the White House and said that they could confirm that it was at least 118,000. And again, that was in October. So like this figure that is continuously cited by the mainstream press right now is around 48,000. And it's such a wild undercount that it's essentially insulting. And I mean, more than insulting. It's horrific. They've killed all of the record keepers and they've destroyed every piece of infrastructure. So there's no way to know if this, finger is connected to the family member that has been incinerated or just blown apart by Israel's massive bombs. And yeah, this is
I was gonna say honestly, the fact that they stick with that number completely, to me, proves their bullshit from earlier when this all, first this most recent attack from Israel, in Gaza on the Palestinians began, because at first they refused to cite any numbers that came from the Hamas-led medical institutions there.
Right.
And the reason they're still sticking with that number is because that's the only number that the Hamas-led institution has been able to provide, because they don't have the resources to actually continue any sort of count. But that's the number they're still going by.
Exactly. And, Trump, as I covered in our conversation with Zachary Foster, endorsed the ethnic cleansing of Gaza right next to to Netanyahu as he grinned, essentially saying, why would they want to go back there? And he said that the United States should take over Gaza. That's what he said. Now, this could just be him not understanding that he means our proxies, the Israelis, will go and reoccupy Gaza like they had previously in history, or he's actually in favor of it. Either way, this was such an exciting development for the Hitler of our time that he went on Fox News to talk about it. His grand plans for extermination are well underway.
He talked about that America would go in, dismantle the dangerous unexploded bombs, level the site, rid the site of destroyed buildings, and create an economic development that would simply supply unlimited jobs, housing for people in the area, and really make it a place worth living in. Is that anything you expected, and do you share that belief? And what do you make of American media taking that he's taking over Gaza? He sounds like he's rebuilding Gaza to me.
Yeah, well, I don't think he talked about sending U.S. troops to complete the job of destroying Hamas. That's our commitment. That's our job, and we're absolutely committed to it. And I also don't think he said that he's going to fund it. He said that neighboring states, wealthy states, would do it. But the actual idea of allowing first Gazans who want to leave, I mean, what's wrong with that? They can leave, they can then come back, they can relocate and come back, but you have to rebuild Gaza. If you want to rebuild Gaza, you can't have this is the first good idea that I've heard. It's a remarkable idea, and I think it should be really pursued, examined, pursued, and done, because I think it will create a different future for everyone.
They can come back, a different future for everyone. They can come back, but they can be to do labor for us.
Yeah, just like they could come back after they spend a little bit of time in Gaza after being expelled in 1948.
They can come back. They can come back and they can be our servants. Just like a handful. The rest of them, they die.
Good behaved ones can serve drinks.
As the way he talks about Gaza, as there's footage of the destruction in the passive voice. I mean, it's destroyed. We have to take them out. We have to take them out. So I shouldn't go down that road. We have to take them out so that we can rebuild it and we can make it into a Trump casino and we can have Jared Kushner. When he says taxpayer money isn't going towards it, do you know what he means? He means capitalist real estate developer money is going to go towards it. And so, hey, Tel Aviv, you can go to a nightclub there, and maybe a few miles away there are people getting slaughtered in an open-air concentration camp. But now, new Gaza City, bunch of nightclubs,
Mediterranean.
You can have some Israeli food there.
I also like how they're presenting this like it's like a new idea. Like, oh, maybe we should try ethnically cleansing the area. We haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah, I know. Right. And we haven't heard, they can come back. They can come back. Yeah, sure they can.
They've been trying to temporarily relocate them to Jordan and Egypt since they started massacring them. But those countries are right to not want to just allow for like mass displacement of the Palestinian people, because they know that they will not be allowed to go back, which is exactly what they're trying to prevent from happening. They're trying to prevent from, this genocide to be completed. Right. Like, ultimately, I think that's what, Trump, I imagine, wants the conflict to be over. But like in his mind, ending it can just mean that like the genocide is complete.
Right.
I love how all of a sudden he sounds so for a free moving Palestinian people. They're not allowed to leave or enter Gaza without permission from Israel or Egypt. And all of a sudden now, Netanyahu is about, they can go wherever they'd like, leave, come back, enjoy yourself. What?
Right.
Like, that's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yeah, and Zach in our interview was talking and reminding me that if you leave Gaza for more than 3 years, you're literally not allowed to come back. They revoke your status and your ability to live there because Israel controls Gaza, because it's a part of Greater Israel. It is a part of the Israeli state, except that they just concentrate the Palestinians there and slaughter them. And then the West Bank is a ghetto that is solely being encroached upon and land is being stolen from. And that is also the next frontier here. And the other part of Greater Israel that is the big prize.
Yeah, the right to they can return stuff is just a mockery of things that I saw so many commentators accept as just, oh, we can't do a right of return for all the refugees displaced in 48 or 73. They're just going to have to live with that because Israel's security concerns are more imperative than international law. Why people are anti-Zionists and think that the whole thing of like Israel has a right to exist. If Israel means the maintenance and construction using brutal methods of a Jewish demographic majority, then it does not have the right to exist. That is an ethnic sort of like just a clear powder keg for what we've seen for 75 years. You cannot do it. You can, or you cannot do it without genocide and ethnic cleansing. And so all this stuff, when we talk about like a one democratic state, Israel's finally going to do us the favor of specifying where exactly its borders are. And guess what? They're going to try to include Gaza, the West Bank, already include the Golan Heights. The problem is all of the people that live there that they don't want to give the vote to. So it is an apartheid state. And again, we're going to go through this next phase of, well, but doesn't Israel have the right to exist? Not like this, no.
As a one democratic state with Palestinians having full rights.
Which means that they might outnumber Jews there.
Right.
And guess what? That's just something that
you have to deal with as a settler colonial state. Sorry, you want to live in an area where is majority Arab, majority Muslim. You don't get to be the demographic majority. Sorry.
And any Israelis that have a problem with that, leave.
And someone just pointed, I did not I did not see this. Ski by BB says, did you see that Netanyahu gifted Trump a golden pager? Effing gross. I did not see it, but I just found it here. Here it is. The New York Post published it. He plated a pager in gold. Can we put this up? What says, press with both hands. And then President Donald J. Trump, our greatest friend and greatest ally. And he did it in his favorite color, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a reference to the jerry-rigged pagers that has, I mean, they...
Wait, is he trying to take out Trump now too?
Yeah,
I mean, why would you
right. I mean, is this an inside job? That's too much wishful thinking. I think
Trump reportedly Trump did say that if Iran takes me out or something, I want war with Iran.
He said I left instructions. Yeah. Like it's like the Book of Henry.
If you are someone who wants war with Iran, I can't think of a better way than to make that happen than to make it look like Iran took out Donald Trump, honestly. I mean, what are you...
They were trying to blame Iran.
The pager is the beginning of that.
They were trying to blame Iran with the assassination attempts in Pennsylvania, and it was just like a lone wolf white kid.
I mean, there is like an insane right-wing like Zionist group going around to pro-Palestine activists and handing them pagers right now. Like that's a thing they're doing.
Right?
Yeah.
The Betar. Yeah. That is the exact same youth movement, BETAR. That is the exact same youth movement that Einstein said was the Hitler youth of our people.
Wow. Yes, you're right. Says a lot. By the way, those pager attacks killed children.
And Zionists love it. If you could ask them behind closed doors.
Oh, they use it nonstop to even just like harass people. Like I just used that example, but they don't need to physically be there. You see them just say it online. Oh, should we give you a pager? Do you need a pager? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, Israel likes to kill kids because that's one less person on their apartheid ledger once they take all the land over.
Jabi Boonier says, let's be clear, Israel sucks, but they could do the funniest thing in history with that pager. Al Sonic from Pittsburgh. I bet that would, for the pager is Cedar. It's a tree of Lebanon. I was wondering what the damn tree was. They are so racist and vile.
They're Nazis.
Yeah.
You did
really feeling themselves right now.
You go for a Jerry Seinfeld impression there. They're so racist and vile.
I don't know. I'm just trying to change the tone
I wish
of my
he said
voice.
that, but we know he thinks the opposite.
If I'm musical with it, then I, won't say what I really want to happen. Don't want to get in trouble. Okay, my brain hurts. CNN reports that Trump targets NWS employees, National Weather Services, like early warnings and stuff we need. Well, I mean,
that's because focusing on the weather makes people think climate change is real.
And you could just nuke the hurricane, like he suggested that one time. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Bay Area Dave. Living in the San Francisco Bay Area, I have come to see Silicon Valley tech innovation follows a 3-step process. 1, break things by any means necessary. 2, profit. And 3, leave the mess for someone else to clean up. Yes. Roz from Ojai. Republicans are all for transhumanism until it comes to vaccines and body-altering surgeries. Yeah. Detective Du Bois. The same people who support RFK Jr. will contradictorily eat all this transhumanism shit up.
I mean, a lot of those people, they're sharing like RFK thing about some, quack remedy he has for
methylene blue.
From radiation when he flies. And it's so funny because guess what? That is a product of the pharmaceutical industry.
Yep. But it's just none of it has consistency.
It was originally an industrial dye. That just became like utilized by quacks and people who are into things like nootropics because it's bioactive. So it's just one of those things that people who are steeped into doing everything but taking vaccines will do to themselves to protect their own doctors.
It's so funny to me though. It's like same with the hydroxychloroquine where people are taking it like a monthly dose of something because they don't want pharma to take over their life. Like, you are constantly looking for something you can pay like a subscription service to, and you think you're getting out of the control of pharma over your life.
I like to think that people, in America just feel a lot of times, this is not a statement on their morals, like out of control. And it feels good to be able to pretend to be your own doctor. It feels good to be able to pretend that you have that you can have a meaningful impact on your own health without having to, resort to using the healthcare system because we're alienated from it. So I think that a lot of people, and you see it across all facets of life, not just medicine, but if people had more community, they wouldn't feel that way.
Exactly.
Their doctor would be their friend.
I can just consume my way intelligently out of this mess.
Yep. NYC transit worker. Hey, folks, new member here. Since you won't read my emails or messages about subway air quality, can I at least get an I'm staying in the race to keep me motivated? I mean, you're being very passive aggressive about it, but I'm sorry. We are so overwhelmed right now. We're trying our best. We'll get to your email, but here you go. Matt's finding it.
Oh, come on, bud.
I'm staying in the race.
Bunk. Detective Du Bois, did this person say he was ethnically cleansed from San Francisco? Comic Tree says ethnically cleansed from San Francisco. This man is claiming he's ethnically conservative. Yep. They're just the more they can degrade meaning, the more it works for them.
Well, did you see the other day that Proud Boy Joe Biggs, who was a January 6th guy, posted a screenshot of how he was searching to rent a home on Zillow, and he reached out to someone, and they got back to him with, "Are you insurrectionist Joe Biggs?" And he screenshotted it and complained to Zillow publicly, and his followers, his MAGA right-wing followers, were going, "This is housing discrimination, sue, sue, sue." No, in fact, it's not housing discrimination to say you don't want to rent to someone who has a history of defacing property. How can you trust them in your home? These are guys. these are guys who would, if I'm sure a lot of them are landlords too. If a felon was to apply for housing at their home, they would immediately say, absolutely not. I'm not even looking at the application. But one of
100%.
their guys, oh, this is housing discrimination.
Exactly.
It's in fact not housing discrimination to not want someone who has previously destroyed property to not live on your property. That's actually not housing discrimination.
I would just also quickly add, what makes the ethnically cleansed from San Francisco thing more disgusting than the fact that it's, referencing probably a genocide that's going on is that, not just San Francisco, but large portions of California are forcing people out. They are forcing homeless people out of their cities, like pushing them further to the margins. Not that homeless people are an ethnicity, but a subpopulation of people, they're pushing them to their margins at this moment. And what he's describing is nowhere near as violent as that. He just means that people don't think he's a genius anymore. People just don't when he's at the coffee shop, they don't go, "Oh my God, are you the CEO of Google?" They just go like, "Ew, is that guy?" That's what he means by he's being ethnically cleansed. He's not being worshipped.
Right. DSA Aaron in Atlanta, Giannis Varoufakis was right. We are in the techno-feudalism era. Phineas Erb, I'll say it, Peter Thiel and his compatriots want to legitimize Epstein Island. Yeah, pretty much. Mott and the Baileys.
Peter Thiel, weird deaths kind of in his vicinity. It might be worth Googling for folks. People falling off, I feel like.
Big buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mott and the Bailey says these men are tech feudalists who want to be lords of their own little manors, where they get to own people as property and as a reward for loyalty to the king. They aren't even hiding their neo-monarchism. Kash Patel literally has an AI-generated kids book about King Donald. I have it right next to me. It's my favorite. It's my favorite book. The Plot Against the King. There he is.
Oh, yeah.
By Kash Patel. He makes himself, you'd be shocked to know, one of the main characters and as close to Trump as possible.
Wow.
I like the sequel that he writes with Dinesh D'Souza. That's called Rise of the King 2000 Mules. Before the fact that 2000 Mules, Dinesh D'Souza had to release an apology about 2000 Mules not being accurate.
Right.
This is probably not worth saying, but you know how some people have a 1,000-yard stare? Kash Patel has a 2-centimeter stare.
Yeah. Okay. Also, really lacking in the neck department. I mean, that is just head on shoulder blades.
What's longer, the neck or the focal point?
All right. While we're having fun, Jesse Lee Peterson made an appearance once again. I mean,
I saw this.
This is not even that. I mean, we just have to have some fun. And I watched this probably 4 or 5 times last night. I was laughing so hard. So Adam Friedland had Jesse Lee Peterson on, who I guess is just no longer.
Sorry, just to clarify, Adam went on Jesse's show.
Oh,
yeah. So,
he did.
Yeah. So
okay.
Jesse in the beginning, Adam in the beginning of the episode, he literally is like, "Who booked me for this?" He literally is like, "Why did you invite me?"
That's actually an interesting question, because there's a while 3 or 4 years ago where everyone except me was getting invited to go on Jesse Lee Peterson. Griscom got invited.
Didn't Michael?
Michael got invited, decided not to do it, but a whole bunch of people did do it.
Right. But he was just such a fun, very dumb right winger to make fun of. He had the whole beta and alpha fixation. Beta. People may remember that from that sound drop. But I guess so Adam Friedland went on his show and they were talking about what's okay to say in terms of humor and jokes about Jewish people and jokes about other races. And it was just a thing of beauty how Adam manipulated him into just saying what he says.
This is so embarrassing. This whole thing has been embarrassing, but I feel like I really like you as a guy.
Let me ask.
Yeah.
Ask.
Go ahead.
If I'm at your show and you're making jokes about the Jews, right? And
myself, kind of, yeah.
Right, and you're making jokes about the Jews, and I'm cracking up. Should I be laughing or not?
It's interesting. I've had that question. It's did people in the Midwest watch Woody Allen movies? because those movies got like wide distribution, right? But it's like, who the hell wants to see that crap? I get it. I'm like, that stuff makes so much sense to me, but it's like, it's so like, I can't imagine that it would appeal to other people.
Should I be laughing if you're making Jewish jokes?
Jewish, like what sense? Like Jewish people
at
or
one
what?
of your shows, and you're up making jokes, and they're really funny.
I'm mainly making fun of myself.
Let's say that all the Jews are laughing, they're cracking up, and I'm sitting there and I wonder, should I laugh or not?
It's a similar
So should I
question,
laugh?
right?
Should I laugh?
But I guess I don't do Jewish jokes.
I thought you said you did.
I do Jewish, like self-deprecation, right? So making fun of yourself is like a self-deprecation. It's like it's an aspect of comedy that, like, yeah, a lot of Jewish
But let me
guys
ask you, because
have
of time,
done.
I got to keep moving here. If you're making Jewish jokes and an audience full of Jews,
What kind of Jewish joke? But I'm not. That's not what I said. I make fun of myself.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Which is a Jew-y thing to do.
So if you
but
make
it's not
a
a
Jew-y joke,
I'm not like.
if you
I'm
make
like,
a
what
Jew-y joke,
Jew
should I
control the
laugh at a
banks?
Jewish audience?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this: you have a
I
show
think it
called.
might-
You have a show called. You host
Did
a show.
I answer your question? Are you moving on?
Wait, where's go the ahead. Part?
You could have, Jesse. You could have pressed me on that. I was vulnerable. You had me on the ropes right there, and you moved on.
But I'm not trying to have you on a rope.
You know what you did? You turned the other cheek, much like this guy from Nazareth.
All right, this is too much context. Yeah, so I want to get to the part where this happens, but it's amazing. I mean, people should watch the whole thing, but keep going.
Poses how revolting I look is funny. Absolutely laugh at me.
Well, how about if you say, I have a
What do you
Jewish...
mean? What is a Jewish joke? Can you explain what that is?
I don't know. You're the comedian.
You keep saying Jewish jokes. I just don't understand what you mean.
But I thought you said that you made Jewish jokes.
I said that I do self-deprecation.
Okay, I got you now. I'll have you now.
Okay,
But let me ask though, and give me
Yeah.
a quick answer because of time. If
No, I don't want to stop talking to you. We got another hour, baby.
So let me ask: if you should make a Jewish joke, and I'm in the audience with a bunch of Jews, should I laugh?
Okay, help me out for a
Should I
second.
laugh?
I'm not. Help me out for a second. Could you please tell me?
Here we go.
A Jewish joke so I can understand what you mean.
Jews love money.
Is that a joke? What are you talking about? That's a joke?
But should I laugh about that? If you made that joke, and I'm in
Should
the
you
audience,
laugh about Jews love money?
What?
Tell me a Jewish joke. Listen, you're a free speech conservative. I'm not sensitive. I'm a comedian.
Right.
I believe in the First Amendment. So just tell me. You have to know one.
I just told you one. You didn't say it was funny.
Jews love money is not. It didn't have the structure of a joke. It didn't have a setup. It didn't have a punchline.
You're still laughing.
Jews have a big nose.
Jesse, you're funny. I believe in you. Okay.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. That's it.
I think he's less of a free speech conservative.
Oh my God.
Oh, sorry, Brandon. What were you saying?
I was gonna say he's less of a free speech conservative and more of like a slurred speech conservative. Like, that's exactly how afraid I am of how like wet my mouth must sound on podcasts. Like it just sounded like he had just like a full mouth full of spit.
I love that he gave. So it's almost as if in a beautiful way, that interaction had the structure of the joke. The setup was the first anti-Semitic remark.
Yes.
And then the second anti-Semitic remark was the punchline. And the fact that none of them were jokes. They were just anti-Semitic remarks.
I love Adam.
He's brilliant.
Like being so patient there and saying like, okay, look, like I know you're ready. You're so prepared for someone to take offense or like let's actually walk through this step by step at a fundamental level. And he can't stop laughing at saying Jews love money.
I know.
I also he keeps bringing up that like in his mind, the only people who would go see like Adam Freeland is a bunch of Jews. He's just like, stay out there with this Jewish audience.
And the Jews are all laughing. Can I laugh? Like, isn't that what he verbatim said?
Yeah. I wish he'd come back on the scene. Miss him.
I think he just thinks like stand-up comedy is just like a room full of Jewish people. Honestly, he just thinks it's just a bunch of Jewish people in the audience.
It's like a synagogue in here. There's just
we love money. That's all he thinks they say too. They're on stage. We love money. Oh my god.
I think conservatives just don't understand what a joke is. Because like since forever, but definitely since like Obama became president, they've just described like the offensive statements that they make as like jokes. Like, you know, Jesse Waters has been doing a lot of that too recently, where it's just like, oh, I just said something really, really gross and offensive. It's like, I'm just joking. It's like,
but they don't understand art. Like that's part of why they can't interpret like The Wolf of Wall Street as satire, and they think it's aspirational, or you know, they look at say something like Goodfellas, or other mob movies like that are well made by Scorsese that are deconstructions of like toxic masculinity. They see them as aspirational and like wish fulfillment. And there's some of that too, right? But they only take the fantasy element of the violence that they can inflict and like out of it, right? And they make it into hero worship. Scarface, same thing. They leave out the parts where it ends badly for them. Yeah.
I mean, it's not even just what they don't understand. It's what they understand free speech humor to be. Like when Elon Musk took over Twitter and they all cheered that when he said comedy is legal again. What do they view as comedy? Jews have big nose.
Right.
Like that's what they like. That's
slurs.
You're just saying a slur. And not even funny
slurs. That's all
slurs.
it is for them. They actually, that to them, like to Jesse, whatever his name is, that was comedy that he was doing. Those were jokes because that's what they view as humor, just slurs.
Exactly.
Which is so true. And also to Emma's point, like they view art, like they view everything, you know, in society as a way to like garner and accumulate power. So when they watch stand-up comedy, they're looking at it as like, oh, this person's on stage and like making people listen to them. And it's so powerful. He has so much power. And art is about how much money you can accumulate. We saw with the NFTs too. Like art is about how much money you can accumulate via, you know, any kind of, you know, medium that can be created as considered creative. They don't think of art as like the act of creation or the act of like putting together like the structure of a joke. They just think of it as like another way in society to like become rich, famous, and have powerful and make people like listen to you.
Or to consume something. Yeah. I mean, and those same people are also enamored by something like ChatGPT, right? Where they don't place value in like what art is and how the labor of art is what we find like beautiful in terms of the result of it. So they think that like there's a shortcut to achieving that kind of expression, and it's all just slop.
It's the imperatives of investors just made to just transplant into people's head like a brain chip. Like all the art or all the like architecture that these sort of like take us back return type of people online that support Elon, like all that, like, you know, from like 150 years ago, that stuff looks interesting because it wasn't made using like all the labor saving processes that have come around since then. It was like masons like building St. Paul's Cathedral by hand and that sort of thing. And then people wonder why we don't build anything like that anymore. It's because the developers are capitalists who are doing it as cheaply as possible, you goddamn idiots.
Right. All right, guys, going to read some IMs and get out of here. Again, sorry about the issues with the phones. Not sure what's going on there, but hopefully I'm sure we'll have it fixed by tomorrow. BRB Forever said there's a Zionist group that approached Norman Finkelstein on the street and put a pager in his pocket.
That was Betar.
Were they also the skunk people, or was that just IDF?
That was just IDF? I think that was just an IDF related thing, as far as I know.
Chris Burdick, the sad thing is that even Jesse Lee Peterson's attempts at the jokes were better structured than the cock joke that Musk wanted to make on SNL.
That's true.
I don't remember what that was.
He pulls that. Yeah, stupid. I do have a book recommendation on this. While we're talking about Betar, this passage comes from a book, A Threat from Within, A Century of Jewish Opposition to Zionism by Yaakov Rabkin. Zionist youth mobilization. I'll start here. Albert Einstein was among the Jewish humanists who announced the Betar youth movement in 1935, describing it as being as much a danger to our youth as Hitlerism is to German youth. Reform Rabbi Stephen Wise expresses indignation at what he saw as a slogan to fit the times. Quote, this is from the movement, Germany for Hitler, Italy for Mussolini, Palestine, not Israel yet, Palestine for Jabotinsky. He considered Jabotinsky's philosophy to be militaristic, while, quote, the whole tradition of the Jewish people is against militarism. An article published in Prague in 1984 under the titled Brown Shirt Zionists accused Jabotinsky of direct links with the fascist dictatorship. And that's the shame that we have to, and the real problem we have to deal with is that one of the world's religions, and like religions can be, you see this with like Opus Dei and Christianity, has been taken over by a fascist movement. That's what Zionism is, Opus Dei, and there's all sorts of different histories in Catholicism. I'm sure other religions have had it too, but none is successful because it combined with the horror of the Holocaust and then all of these post-war imperial powers giving billions and billions to that strain of ideology. And,
that's a great
we see
point.
The world that we've gotten.
I mean, on a smaller scale, the United States funding Muslim fundamentalists and as a way to combat the Soviet Union. And we also saw the detrimental effects. Like, that's what I hate about the Western chauvinist kind of fixation on women's rights in the Middle East, because it's just obscuring the very fact that these are the people that in many cases we elevated. What WTF Cody said, I literally yelled in laughter at him saying Jews have big nose. What in the world? He was really trying. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator, I hear Jesse Lee Peterson really liked reflector vests and safety cones. Okay. I think I see what you're saying, but Desert Lefty, Benjamin Nosferatu sounds like he's from Wakalia. I made a joke that Barron Trump looked like Nosferatu on Twitter, and it's crazy how obsessed with him the MAGA fans are. They were very mad about that. And he's never said anything.
Nosferatu is a sex object, I thought.
Well, it's just that he's tall and awkward. That was the joke.
Okay.
It's really not that big of a deal. But
the things I see people say about Nosferatu is he's what women want.
Yeah, I mean,
he groomed that girl. Did they see the movie?
Yeah.
I saw so many tweets from being like, have to. Can I say something about Nosferatu?
You're so ridiculous. I think maybe they've got to be joking. Well, that's a whole other thing. But the movie for like sexual advice for women, I would say, is the movie Baby Girl. That's the one that I think men should see. But great film. I can't believe she didn't get nominated for Best Actress. But another day we could talk about the Amelia Perez drama, because I know that Sam would never want to talk about it, but I find that story so fascinating. Does no one care about this like me?
I was reading her tweets today, and some of them are bangers, but
just like the most racist. It was just, the movie was accused of its racism and its portrayal of like a trans woman who prior to that was like a drug kingpin, and then transitions into a woman and it absolves her of everything. And the French director was saying, I don't need to understand Mexican culture to make a movie about it. It was accused of being racist at the beginning, and everyone had that feeling, as did I. And then it was just like this gift from the universe that this woman had the most racist tweets ever. It's funny. And it's an indictment of like what appears to be on its face a liberal story about trans, like a trans woman, but in fact is like so deeply offensive on so many different levels. And of course, the Hollywood establishment rewards it with like many awards.
This is actually a perfect time to announce that I'm launching a new project because I'm looking for VC funding. So it's a new platform where, like, if you're hiring an actor or CEO or any like public facing individual, it will scan all of their social media posts for like racist, bigoted things, and it will delete them automatically. So you don't get caught up in stuff like this. The subscription is currently $100,000 a year, but I think it's worth it if you don't want to get Amelia Perez's did.
Yeah. All right. Well, free advertising here on the Majority Report for that new project.
Pronomos, reach out to me. I can have a whole district in your city. It could be like Cyberpunk 2077.
5 more. Old Chomsky. Did y'all see Russell Brand pivot to how, as a Christian, he can't help but reflect on the Old Testament and the special relationship Jewish people have with that land?
Oh my God.
What a clown he's turned into.
Russell Brand tweeted out like 3 months ago that he's like, can you believe all this confusing stuff in Leviticus? Leviticus is like the 4th book in the Old Testament. Like, if you should probably get to Leviticus before you get baptized by Bear Grylls.
Yeah. He and coincidentally, the BBC had an investigation that came out about him last week. So.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Basically apologizing for not taking complaints seriously or rising them up in the chain of command. And I can say, as somebody who listened to every single episode of the BBC, both 6 Music and Radio 2 Russell Brand shows, it does not take long. Pick a random episode and you will find him basically derailing an interview. And I thought this was funny when I was like an 18-year-old, but you cannot listen to an episode of that without him derailing any interview. And it's not just with women, it's any interview by turning it to sex. The guy has a clear problem. And also is pretty obvious that all the competition winners for their contests about from previous things that got selected happen to be women invited in studio.
Yeah.
And I think some of the accusations come from those folks.
Yep, I think that's actually true. I read that. Kowalski from Nebraska. The only 3 countries that could conceivably take Palestinian refugees is Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. All of them have said absolutely not. The Jordanians are already on the verge of an internal revolt with the complicity that they have had with the genocide. The Saudis might be fine with the labor, but they're already dealing with a lot of internal strife. And no, these people aren't leaving. The Egyptians already have way too many people than the state can functionally take care of, and 3 active military conflicts occurring simultaneously, as well as needing to keep forces in their major urban areas to prevent food riots. Not to mention, if any country does take in refugees, they will be absolutely despised by the rest of the Arab community. This is an impossible plan. I guess you could relocate all the people of Gaza to Tel Aviv and move the people out of Tel Aviv. They could go and stay in hotels across Israel until the Gaza Strip is repaired, but I have a feeling they won't go for that plan.
A lot of those people still have houses that could just move into if they weren't under Israeli control.
Exactly.
You know, Trump probably would not understand what you just did there. And if you flaunt that idea to him, he might be like, that's a good idea, and say it out loud.
The Israelis would throw a fit.
No, right. And then they would
detonate his beeper.
7 in 10.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
7 in 10. There was a poll that was just done. 7 in 10 Israelis approve of Trump's plan to ethnically cleanse Gaza.
Well, he had to win them back over after they blamed him for the ceasefire.
Yeah. I mean, how dare he? Hitchens goes, federal workers, remember the trauma is the point, stick together and understand it. Seattle Steve, for my fellow Seattle folks, make sure to turn in your ballots by next Tuesday, February 11th. 2 important levies to fund schools and a new tax for large corporations to fund social housing. All right, check that out. Tim Pools Plunger, does Jesse Waters think there is a Jewish Apollo Theater? And you mean Jesse Lee Peterson, but it does sound like that.
Jesse Lee Waters?
Yeah. Jewish Apollo Theater is that is what he's envisioning. And the final I am of the day.
All right, now that is funny.
Yeah. Dark Soul, I'm going to sit my cis white ass down and listen to this French guy. Hollywood. Yeah, exactly right. The movie that was the best about actually, and it's a spoiler. Matt, I did watch the movie that we described that you accidentally spoiled for me, and that's a better, whatever. expression of a non-gender conforming experience than Amelia Perez. All right, guys. 6. Not the number. We're ending the show. Brandon, Matt, Bradley. Thank you guys so much. We will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive